Hi, and welcome to Coco Disaster. I'm Chorpsoy.
I'm Zane Zero.
And I'm Jordan.
That's right! We have a very special guest. Jordan's back on the podcast to roll out the red carpet for the Anime of the Year 2018 awards show.
Woo! That's right. I'm just here to do the introductory manual labor and get my paycheck, and then I'm out. Steal some free coffee when I'm stepping out of the door.
Grab a third bagel on the way out. It only took us until the spring to get around to this, but it's finally time to count down the best, and maybe the not-so-best, anime of 2018.
Were there any bad ones?
There were a couple.
I mean, there were some. I didn't watch a lot of them, so I can't, I can judge. I will judge, but,
I absolutely will judge.
Absolutely. No, that's the kind of podcast this is. So, there's some judging to be had, but also, we're excited to talk about good anime. There was some good anime this year.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It was a really good year.
Yeah, I loved it. There's some really good stuff, and a bunch of stuff I never got around to, so, look forward to doing that one day.
Oh.
When I finally
George,
retire.
How can you do an Anime of the Year podcast if you haven't even watched every Anime of the Year? Unlike
I guess
me.
You're right. It's like Netflix said, if you haven't watched an entire thing, you're not allowed to criticize it. Also, if you watch the whole thing, you're not allowed to criticize it.
Because then you're a mark.
Exactly. Alright, so, with 3 people here, it's probably going to be a little bit long, so let's jump right in to our unofficial official awards. These are the things that we don't really, quantify. It's just a place to talk about things where, we just want to give it a little attention to something. And first off,
Louis Armstrong.
That's right. Louis Armstrong.
He made a comeback this year,
music.
folks. That's right.
We haven't, unfortunately, we haven't gotten to the JoJo's part where Nut King Call is, so can't enjoy that yet. There's no JoJo for Louis Armstrong, right? There's no.
No, I don't think so.
Oh.
Okay. Oh, we're checking now.
Well, you may have joked, but Nut King Call is a stand.
I know Nut King Call is. I don't know why it's not Nat King Cole, but. Oh, there's a title of a chapter in Stone Ocean called What a Wonderful World. Good enough.
There you go.
That'll do it. Alright, anyways. So, first up is the best anime that wasn't from 2018 that we watched this year.
Yeah.
And Zane started this off with one in particular that I have enjoyed the title of for a long time and have no idea what it's about. So tell me about Gun X Sword.
Gun X Sword. So, I got the idea to watch this because the next Super Robot Wars game that's coming out has Gun X Sword in it, and I kept hearing this show is good. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll search for it, and I found out that Funimation has it all on YouTube, so I decided, okay, why not? I'll watch it. And Gun X Sword is really fucking stupid in a good way.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so Gun X Sword follows the adventures of Van, who seems like a cool, mysterious drifter type, but slowly over the course of the series, you find out that he's just this weird man-child that just keeps drifting around and solving problems.
Oh, so it's a shonen anime.
Yeah, basically. And he is joined on his quest by a girl named Wendy, who is trying to find her missing brother. And one of the things I like about this show a lot is that every episode feels like Van and Wendy stumble into a completely different robot series and just kind of bumble around through it, and it's really cool. I like that a lot. There is an episode very early on that has a tribute to Voltron with old men piloting a Voltron, and it rules, and they become main characters later on. But I think another thing that I liked about Gun X Sword is that our protagonist, you eventually find out that he is out for revenge against the man with a claw hand for killing his wife as they were getting married. And throughout the entire show, Van never becomes dissuaded from his quest for vengeance and actually fulfills it in the end. And that's not something you'd see in anime a whole lot, where it kind of just sticks to their guns. The whole show kind of reminded me a bit of Tales of Berseria, which was just about a gang of misfits fighting against this group of folks that was bringing, law and order to the world and all that. But I like Gun X Sword. It was a lot of fun. It's very stupid in a good way, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the adventures of Van and Wendy and the other misfits in this group.
I'm a little confused right now. Is Gun X Sword the anime where the character always has a gun and a sword because he goes to multiple universes, and in some universes the guns don't work? Or is that something else? Oh.
No, that is something else. I think it is called Gun X Sword because he has a gun holster, but when he draws it, it's a sword.
Oh, that's cool.
Also, his rival character, who has the exact same backstory that he does, except he is even angrier, has a revolver with a really, really long stock, so it looks like he has a katana.
Oh, like the Joker in the first Batman movie.
Yes. It's stupid. I love this show.
Great. I'm glad.
Remember when
Jordan, you have a very special one. Oh, go ahead.
What? Oh, no, I was going to say, remember when Jack Nicholson decapitates Batman's parents in an honor killing?
Wow. Finally, something new with the Batman universe. All right, so Jordan, you have one on here, and it's one that has lived on in the Cocoa Disaster mythos.
What?
I feel like the mythos of Cocoa Disaster will remember this particular entry on the list of shows not from 2018.
No, I don't watch anime.
No, what? What fucking podcast do you think you're on? Who do you fucking think you are?
I thought this was Cocoa Disaster, the podcast on which we review the sexiest new hot cocoa products. Well, actually, my local supermarket has this little plaque hanging by the front door where apparently their full fat chocolate milk was rated as the best in the whole country.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which is surprising because they're like a B brand store. Speaking of B, I watched the first 5 episodes of Bleach this year. As I've been known to do. I didn't make it to the usual full 20. Because, as some of you might know, I'm of the opinion that the first arc of Bleach is really good, and then the rest not so much. And sometimes I go back to re-experience the glory days, if you will. And I partially did that again this year, and I vaguely enjoyed it.
That's great. I'm glad that you can go back over and over and still find joy in the very beginning of Bleach.
Yeah.
So you wanted to talk about B. I'm here to talk about D. That's right, Vampire Hunter D, Bloodlust.
Oh, you didn't put this on the list?
I did.
You
now.
did. Oh my god, that's real sneaky.
Gotcha. But as far as stuff that was my first time watch this year that I got around to, I think Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust was my favorite thing just because of how much of a surprise it was. Kind of knowing Vampire Hunter D's name and not really knowing what the series was going into it. It was very different than what I expected. I expected it to be a little bit schlockier. I definitely expected it to be a little more hyper-violent, but actually it's really cool. And I don't know, it's very slow in a very interesting way. That really gives attention to its characters and its world building in a way that's very entertaining and charming.
That's interesting because as a teenager, I read a lot of the Vampire Hunter D books, and they're extremely schlocky. You wouldn't tell it from the artwork on the cover and what have you, but man, it reads like fan fiction, especially the earlier entries.
Huh.
Yeah. It's all and then D suddenly teleported behind the driver and cut his lungs out or whatever.
Cut his fucking
Nothing
dick
personal, pal.
Nothing personnel, kid.
Nothing personnel, kid, and the D has the big Vampire Hunter D flourish on it.
and then the Count said, that guy is inhuman. But I definitely think the film did a really good job of setting a good, consistent tone to it. So maybe it's an elevation of the source.
I think so, yeah.
And it really does capture Yoshitaka Amano's art style in a way that I basically would have never imagined in animation. Just because he has such a painterly sort of very a very particular sort of art style that seems hard to capture in anything but, like, illustrations that he does.
Right.
So yeah, I think that was really cool, too. And then another unofficial award I wanted to go over is just, like, a best recap. Because you know what? Okay, so let's say it. Recap episodes, for the most part, bad.
Yep.
Yeah.
But sometimes, they elevate it in a way by, like, having, like, a character do it in their voice and, like, add commentary to it or something like that.
It's really funny that you said elevate, because whenever I think of recap episode, the first thing I think of is an episode of Totally Spies where they're stuck in an elevator. And the whole episode is just them going over ways in which Whoop is a terribly managed company who just plays games with their lives.
Oh, huh. And so, like, when it comes to recap episodes, I think of, like, Recreators from a couple years back, where, like, it's all done in a character's voice and is very, like, kind of snarky looking back on all the things that have happened throughout the series so far. And this year, I think we got one that was pretty good, which is the Mob Psycho 100 Reagan OVA, which is about Reagan kind of pawning off writing his biography to Mob. And it does a thing where it's like he takes credit for all of the things that happened in season 1. So it shows footage from season 1, but it's just plastered Reagan's face, like, really poorly over all of the scenes where Mob or any of the other characters is doing a psychic thing.
That's pretty good.
So it's just like a single static face over and over throughout, like, 10 or 12 scenes as they describe what happened in the story.
Bones is really slipping, man. They don't do it the way they used to.
I just find that really charming because he also, like, is, like, showing off the things he's written to various characters from the series, and all of them are sort of, like, critiquing it and helping him rewrite it to be more accurate and to give Mob more credit. And so when Reagan finally gets it back, he just reads through it and basically just is like, and then Reagan did nothing and let everyone else take over. And then he took all the credit, and he feels so bad that he ordered, like, 1,000 copies of this thing and he can't sell them anymore. And so I find that just, like, a really charming premise for a setup for that.
And then I have one as well. It's the second half of the Thunderbolt fantasy movie called The Sword of Life and Death. The first half of it was just basically a prequel taking place before the events of the series about the Screaming Phoenix Killer. But the second half is a recap episode of what happened in season 1, where Shang meets some guy who's impersonating him and using that to, like, live an easy life. And he basically describes all the events of season 1, except this guy is in there instead of Shang, and they actually went through, and since this is, a puppet deal and all that, they actually refilmed all of those scenes with this new puppet with, like, really dumb, cheesy extra effects to make it even more fantastical than it actually was. And it's really, really funny. But they actually managed to give the imposter, a decent bit of, like, why he's being an imposter and all that, and it's like, and develops Shang a bit more, too, and what kind of guy he is. So it pushes the story forward a bit more between Season 1 and Season 2. But I just really like the idea of Shang just being like, okay, I guess there's an imposter of me. That's great.
Yeah, I'm really glad both our recap episodes are just, like, people trying to take the place of the actual main characters.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, that sounds super good, but I feel like it goes against the spirit of being a recap episode because a lot of actual work was put into it.
Right. It's too good for a recap.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, how much work can you put into a recap episode?
If it wouldn't be called episode 11.5 on Crunchyroll, then it doesn't count.
Like, I think about that, like, again, the Recreators one, where it's like, there is quite a bit of extra work because it is, like, one of the characters, Meteora, just, like, talking through the whole thing in, like, a void, but also being like, you know what? Thinking back on it, I think I want to make my own original character to be in this story instead of
it's me, but sexier.
Right, and she just makes her but sexy because she has no idea how to be creative. And it's so good. God bless.
Yeah, that was a good episode.
But now, it's time for us to talk about the real awards.
The official awards.
Yeah, these are the official awards. These are the ones that are going down on the docket. These are the ones going down in history as Coco Disaster made these decisions.
Let it be known that we are accredited anime reviewers, but the previous ones were like off institute grounds.
Right. These ones, we're hard at work. We are here in the papal church. The white smoke will go up when we're done with the recording. And they will know that another year of anime is officially allowed to begin.
Finally.
Hooray.
And so, what better place to start than the best OP of 2018? And now, when I think about this, I think about not only is the song good and, like, get you pumped up for the thing that's coming, but, like, also, like, the visuals and the thematics of it and how it fits into the greater story, you know?
Right.
So, Jordan, why don't you start off in talking about your favorite OPs?
Oh, I did not expect this. I thought we were going in order, but that's okay. The first one on my list is from the anime Hanebado, and it's Futari no Hane, or Two Feathers by Yurika. This is an OP that I liked right from the start when I first saw it, but I actually grew to appreciate it more later on. Because the thing about it is that it has a very specific structure to it. It has this bit at the start where all these character movements of them playing badminton are like animated in great detail. I'm pretty sure it's animated on ones with like all this really flashy, with all these really flashy colors, and it just looks lovely. And then there's sort of a break in the middle, and then at the end, the same thing returns. And at first, I thought they just reused the same animation, and that sort of ruined it for me, because it's like, okay, you did this really labor-intensive bit of animation, and that's awesome, but then it's kind of weird to reuse that. That feels like you're kind of losing the point of it all. But then, by the end, I realized that it's not reused animation. They actually carry through the movements from the first bit and, like, follow up on those. And that's super cool. So you have, like, for example, in the first part of the OP, you have characters, you have like a foot twisting on the ground, and then in the second part you have that foot taking off from the ground. And it's just, it looks really good. I think it's probably the best looking OP of this year, and the song is really good too. It's a really charming, just like pump up anthem. It doesn't really fit the show that much, as I guess we'll cover later on, but I really liked it, I guess, separated from that.
It gets you pumped for badminton, which is decidedly not how any of the characters feel about badminton.
No. Well, I mean, like two of them, you know, and they kind of ruined it for everybody else, but...
Right, at least they're having fun.
Yeah, that's right. Well, they're not having fun, but they are into it.
Yeah, they're into it. I guess you're right. They're into it. I'm not sure anyone's having fun.
Yeah.
Maybe by the end.
I hope so. So my second one is from the Junji Ito collection, and it's Shichiten Bato no Blues, which I'm told means Writhing in Agony Blues, but I have not been able to verify that because I was only able to find that in one source. And it's by the group The Pinballs. This is a bit of a weird one because I actually did not like the Junji Ito collection at all. We'll be talking about it more later on. But this OP really provides a better image of what someone would have want out of an anime based on Junji Ito's works than the actual show does. The imagery in it is super interesting, which is surprising because it's not a very expensive looking OP, but they use what they have very well. So you have like all these sort of Art Deco patterns moving in the background, and then on the foreground you have all these pieces of art, and a lot of the time it moves sort of, it looks sort of like paper handcrafted animation, and it's really creepy. It has a really creepy vibe to it that the show itself usually doesn't manage to match. One thing it really reminded me of was an episode of Marble Hornets, which was a Slender Man themed web series. And they had like this alternative channel where a side character uploaded all these creepy videos. And there was a similar thing there where the style of the video was all about these paper cutouts writhing around, and it looked kind of gross and unreal. And this OP matches that really well. It also has this really neat imagery where there's a naked lady and there's like she's bleeding, but instead of it showing blood, like the blood lines are just cut out of her and the background seeps through it. It's just visually, it's a really interesting opening. Mm-hmm. And the music is really good too, even though, again, it doesn't really fit with the show, but I really like it. It's like this hardcore funk rock, jazz rock jam that just goes hard for a minute and a half. Like, once it starts, it does not slow down until the very end. I think on the whole, like, a hardcore rock song doesn't really fit with the Junji Ito collection. I guess sort of the fact that it never lets up on the tension does fit. So in that sense, it is very good.
Mm-hmm. All right, cool.
Yeah. So this next one is from High School Girl, and it's New Stranger by Sora Tobe Sanaka. This one, I'll be honest, I mostly like it for the first 10 seconds. I don't know about you, Chorps.
Yeah, I definitely get that. Like, it's a very cool first 10 seconds.
Yeah, so the first 10 seconds is just like this amazing guitar sweep picking session at a very weird, like it's in 5/8. What's that?
Oh, it's a weird time signature.
It's a weird time signature, yeah.
It's super math rocky.
Yeah, it's such a wild way to start an introduction. And then in the background, you have like in time with the rhythm of the sweep picking, you have like windows coming into frame on silhouetted buildings, and it all looks super interesting. And then after that, you have some video game stuff, and that's all right. But it's mostly those 10 seconds were the best 10 seconds in anime openings this year, and that's why I liked it so much.
I can definitely agree. Like, it's such a strong and like evocative opening, and then also it's like in the background you're watching like actual real footage of Street Fighter 2. Because like that is the focus of High Score Girl, is it's like about people who like connect over competitive video games, basically.
Speaking of that, there is also this really cool shot near the end where you see two of the main characters sitting at arcade cabinets that are like back to back with each other, which is pretty common for like competitive games. And the camera rotates around them, and then partway into it, the screen disappears, so you see them not looking at each other because they're looking at their controls, but like facing each other. And I thought that was a really interesting thematic link that they visualized very well. That's cute.
And then to even show like their further friendship, like it sweeps through that shot, and then they're both sitting next to each other playing the game.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's like very cute.
And also they used silhouettes very well in this opening, which I think is noteworthy because this is a 3D anime and a 3D opening. And 3D silhouetting can look really weird and blocky when it's not done right. So I think that deserves to be mentioned, that they managed to make the OP look really good while using silhouettes despite that.
Yeah, totally.
Let's see, that was number 3. Number 4, this one is a bit of a strange pick because it's from an anime I didn't actually see. It's from Release the Spice. It is called Spato, Spy, and Spice by Tsukikage. So this opening has all the stuff I like. It has vibes, both musically and visually. Like, again, it starts with a lot of really cool, like, vibrant colors set in tone in the music. It's got just, like, the song itself is more of, like, a pump-up rock jam. But I really enjoy the way it's combined with, like, the action visuals. Because it's a very light song, when I think for an action anime these days you expect the level of rock they're at to be more and more severe. I actually know much about Release the Spice, but I get the idea that it is a fairly serious anime despite all the bright pink colors and all that.
Maybe not for the first half.
All right. But yeah, despite that, I think this is a really good OP. The song is like super lovely. I really like the way they frame everything, because the characters in the show have pretty bad costumes. Like, they're really revealing. I mean, the designs of them are pretty cool, but they're really revealing, and they're teenage girls, so that's always like an angle that I don't really like them to dive into. But they frame them in such a way in this opening that they look fairly respectable, and that's pretty good.
I'm just mad at that song because it makes it really obvious that the ending, that Spice is just Spy and Spice combined.
Yeah.
Really want to lean in hard on that. Look, guys, if you guys don't get the pun, look, we're working it out for you guys. Guys, we're clever.
See, here's the thing. When you have a complicated, layered narrative, like in Release the Spice, you can't be having your viewers left behind, all right? They need to be in on that baseline, or else they're going to be lost before the eye catcher even comes in, you know?
Right.
Sometimes you got to lead the audience by the hand a little bit at the start, or else things are going to go poorly. And finally, I have the second opening from Golden Kamuy, or the opening from the second season. It's Reime by Sayuri and My First Story. This is a really interesting one because I think it was a lot better than the first OP, mostly because this one sells the balance between like the sort of serious survival and like hunting aspects of Golden Kamuy with the very aggressive comedy that it has. Because Golden Kamuy is a series that has, pretty normal type of like silly faces and characters doing like goofy things that they probably shouldn't do as comedy, but they lean into it so far that it feels like a very different type of comedy. So you have a bit in this OP where characters are just very aggressively chomping down on a leek. And that is definitely like something sort of has that Golden Kamuy feeling to it. And I really like that. I also think they do a really good job of sort of introducing the characters in like using very limited screen time. Because, it's that kind of OP where a character sort of shows up for 3 seconds and some of them maybe don't even get more than a still frame. There's, for example, one bit where the way all we get to know about a character is that their shirt pops and they unleash their sick pecs.
Wow, that sounds like the most Golden Kamuy thing in the world.
There you go. It's all, it's all very efficient, and I think it really sells the tone of the show and gets you excited for it. And I think that's what's most important, especially for a show like Golden Kamuy, which needs a little bit of help getting you excited for it. Mm-hmm. And those are my best OPs. Well, they're not my best OPs. I didn't make all of them, but they are my favorite ones.
Yeah, I drew these. Yeah, so great. I'll go with mine now. So, from Jordan's list, I also had the opening to Hanebado and High School Girl on them. The 3 others, I had Shiny Days by Asuka from Laid Back Camp. And, first of all, the song's very good. It starts out and you're basically listening to I Want You Back by the Jackson 5.
Absolutely. Wait, isn't it more like ABC?
It's like both of those.
Or is that the same song? Okay.
I feel like they have very similar parts.
Yes. I guess you're right.
You could argue either. But I think, so Laid Back Camp, pretty kind of chill slice of life, but the sort of like fun and adventure aspect of all of these characters going out camping is really explored in the OP, where it just kind of starts out with all of them it's sort of like a stage play kind of thing where they have like backgrounds that are like giving off the idea that they're camping, but they're very clearly just like in a void cube, because like all these backings also have all of the credits on them. Mm-hmm. And it eventually builds into sort of like just shots of sort of the camping sites that they go to throughout the series, until it finally ends with all of them getting into a tent together and it shoots off into space.
Yeah, buddy, just like in the show.
Just like in the show. And so like it's very much like something that's really supposed to bring you up and sort of lift your spirits for what is very much just a cutesy sort of like feel-good slice of life series. And I think it works really well for that. Mm-hmm. And so yeah, it just kind of picks you up to just kind of like lay you down and like let you enjoy 24 minutes of a bunch of girls just like going out camping.
Yeah. I really like the bit where, I don't remember what she's called. I think she's called Enna, like Rin's friend. Mm-hmm. Where she gets the dog who's flying outside of the tent and then hugs him. Yeah,
the fact they put a lot of emphasis on the dog, very good.
The dog is really good.
Very good dog. Mm-hmm. Then next up, sort of on a very different sort of spectrum, I have the opening to Legend of the Galactic Heroes, The New Thesis. And this is Binary Star by Sawano Hiroyuki. So Sawano has a very particular music style. He's very good at writing exactly one song about 400 different ways. But I think that the opening to Legend of the Galactic Heroes is, like, you can definitely still feel some of that flair from him and sort of like the vocals and stuff, but it's very different from a lot of his other work, because I feel like it's trying to capture the feeling of almost like a live action drama from like the era where the original Legend of the Galactic Heroes would have come from. So like everything about it really feels like they're trying to hone in on the idea that this is a very like human story by making it seem like it could be live action, just in the way that it's framed and sort of the way that it introduces the characters, just like cut-ins on the scene, like just like short bits that you could imagine they just stripped from the show in tune with shots of like the spaceships and stuff as they go to war. And so like, I really appreciate that sort of dedication to really capturing this certain sort of like feel and concept for the OP, and the way that the song really like tries to increase that by sort of being like a very like rock ballad, sort of like very heavy on strings, very high on sort of like getting you prepared for sort of like space melodrama in the particular way that Legend of the Galactic Heroes does that. It feels like it's very beholden to the idea of like when Legend of the Galactic Heroes came out. Like, this is an update, not like an upgrade. Like, it's still trying to capture that original feeling.
All right. That's interesting. You know, before you mentioned it, I did not realize that the title was supposed to be Die Neue These. I thought it just said Die Neue These. And I didn't understand why it was called that.
Die Neue These Nuts.
That would be an upgrade, not update, alright.
Right, no, that's an upgrade.
Can you imagine if, like, the just like one of the big ships from Legend of the Galactic Heroes that's just the same, except it has a colossal pair of truck nuts hanging off the back?
That's how you know they're truly evil.
I mean, from what I saw from the one episode I watched, the ships are already pretty damn phallic.
Oh.
Yeah, they're basically just like huge, long, like spaceships, like very much in sort of the, we had to construct a lot of these very fast for our set. But then the last one I have on here is Pop Team Epic by Sumire Uesaka from, and you may have guessed it, the anime Pop Team Epic.
If you hadn't said it, I would have asked for a joke what anime it was from.
Oh, thank you. No, thank you for holding on to the joke for that. But I really like the Pop Team Epic OP. I think it's very, as much as it can be, I think it is very indicative of what to expect from Pop Team Epic. It kind of opens up on this shot of like a CRT TV that's playing like a really low quality animation version of things you'll see later in the show, right before it gets smashed by a baseball bat with nails in it.
Yeah, buddy.
And in interviews, they said, oh yeah, we actually smashed a TV for this. So, you know, dedication to quality. But everything else is sort of like kind of non sequitur sort of scenes that just sort of, they don't appear to have anything to do with Pop Team Epic, and then something will be like ripped away, or like the focal point will change in such a way that it's like very clearly like the Pop Team Epic characters kind of forcing their way into the shot. And it's just like non-stop sort of like visual stimulation. And I think that again, it's just like, if you want to sell Pop Team Epic as much as you could sell Pop Team Epic, like, this seems like the way. It's just like, yeah, it's going to be a whole bunch of fucking nonsense, and you have no idea what you should expect coming into it. And so I think that that's what really captures the essence of the show in a way that is very good. And like, it's just very, it's a very abrasive sort of like pop song as well that's playing through it, that I think, again, like, plays a bit more into sort of the Pop Team Epic idea. Like, you know, these characters may look cute, but they are going to be doing extremely non-cute things.
Yeah, if it was going
like
to be
the Nega slice of life anime.
If it was going to be a jazz song, it would have to be called Jazz Team Epic. So
exactly right. No, of course. Thanks, Jordan.
You're welcome.
I'm always glad to have you back. All right, Zane. What about you?
All right, well, I feel bad because I didn't put nearly as much thought into my choices as y'all did.
Well, maybe that just means your opinions are more pure, you know?
Well, I'm just gonna go for the one that I have the least thought put into, which is Winding Road by Man with a Mission, which is the OP for Golden Kamuy Season 1. I just picked that because I really like the song.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that's enough.
Yeah.
Sometimes a song can like just carry it. Like, the song just feels really good for the, you know, the show, or just in general.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like, there are bands I've gotten into just because they did a good OP for a show.
Okay, the first thing that comes to mind is like is Bradio, who did the OP for It was
You're on thin ice right now.
I feel bad for forgetting.
Death Parade.
Yeah, Death Parade. For a second, word escaped me. But yeah, Bradio is really good, but anyway. The other ones I have a little bit more thought put into, at least. First one is, Bright Burning Shout by Takanori Nishikawa, who you may know as TM Revolution, and, by looking at his Wikipedia page, I learned that TM Revolution stands for Takanori Makes Revolution.
I was hoping it would stand for The Minecraft.
Thank you, Mr. Hot Limit. But yeah, Bright Burning Shout, other than I just like the song, it's a lot of one of the two main characters, Nero Claudius, swinging her sword at shadows, which is what a lot of the show deals with, is fighting the shadows of the past to sort of reclaim a future for humanity, which it's a lot of nice visuals for a show like this, and because it's Shaft, it's pretty well animated. But yeah. My third one is Howling Sword by Shuhei Keita, which was the opening for Garo Vanishing Line Season 2.
This was a good one.
Yeah, I liked it a lot, but I feel like it's a bit better animated than the first OP was. It sells what the second season is going for, which is our main cast is going on a journey to try and find out what the hell El Dorado actually is. It shows all of our main cast. It gives you a good idea of like the seriousness of the second season now that they're on this road trip. I'm super fond of it for that reason. For my fourth one, I guess I have His/Story, also by by TM Revolution, but the actual music was done by Sawano Hiroyuki. I like this one a lot, not just because the music is good, but because they actually managed to weave it into the actual show itself in a very, very good way of the character who is actually voiced by TM Revolution singing it to fight against a giant dragon.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh, that rules.
Yeah, I love it for that reason alone.
And then the dragon's like, wow, I think that might be one of my best OPs of the year.
He's so stunned, he gives up the horn they were after. And then, my last one is, Fighting Gold by Coda from, JoJo Part 5, Golden Wind. And I like this one a lot more for the meta reason of, this is the first time Coda and, I know it was a collab between someone else, but, hold on one sec.
Toshiyuki Omori.
Yeah, I think this was the first time they collaborated ever since doing the original, Evangelion opening, I believe it was.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it was the first time they collaborated since then, and I think that's really, really cool, and it shows by being a really good, dynamic OP that sort of gives you an idea of, like, all of our main characters' stands and what they do, and, yeah, it's really cool, and I like it a lot.
I really like the opening of Fighting Gold, too. Like, I really like just, like, the guitar riffs going into, like, sort of the pizzicato strings and stuff, like, again, like, the first 10 seconds I really love the music of, and everything else is good. But everything else is still good, but, like, that first 10 seconds, like, the way it's, like, cutting around is, like, very cool.
Yeah. Like I said, y'all put a lot more thought into this than me. I put a lot more thought into my other categories.
I think this one also sort of does a better job of copying the visual stylings of JoJo's than the Part 4 intro did. Like, it's a lot of hue shifts, which has always been a big part of JoJo's. Just like a lot of repetitive, or not, well, repetitive has a negative connotation to it, but I mean it in a good way. Repetitive use of color. A very, very pretty looking OP in ways I think the Part 4 OP, or the first one at least, was not.
Yeah, that's fair.
Though Crazy Noisy Bizarre Town, very good track.
It is still pretty
good song.
Yeah, it was.
Alright, so let's count down what y'all thought was your favorite one of the year, starting, again, with Jordan.
Now, before I do that, I have one honorable mention I'd like to make. Actually, it's two, but the second one's really short. So the first one is from My Hero Academia Season 3, the first half. It is Odd Future by Overworld. This is a very strange one for me because when I first heard this, I hated it. And in some ways, I still do. I distinctly remember tweeting something along the lines of, I've never heard a song that slaps less hard than the new My Hero Academia opening.
Oh, right, this is the one where you were like, I can't believe it takes a whole minute to have the beat drop.
Well, see, that's the funny thing. That is actually, I started paying attention to this while I was looking through the OPs for this year. Right at the minute mark is usually when the chorus starts in an OP. For this song, it's at 1:15, which means there's like 10 seconds of time for the actual chorus to exist before it needs to like go away again. So as an OP, I think this one's actually really bad. Like, it has no vibes. The verse is 1,000,000 hours long. It has 2 pre-choruses, each of which are 1,000,000,000 hours long. And then the chorus isn't even that good. And the chorus is actually, like, the animation is mistimed. So when the chorus kicks in, it does finally, like, really pump up. And it kicks into, like, this footage of All Might having his Sans eye glow up and, like, him powering up. And the ground starts, like, moving around him like his Dragon Ball Z. But it's, like, half a beat off. So it doesn't look as cool as it really should look. But the thing is, the full version of this song is actually extremely good.
Huh.
Like, it has a softer version of the chorus at the start. It has a really good saxophone breakdown. It doesn't actually have the double pre-chorus, which is really weird. Like, they cut this song in the worst way.
They cut that up just for the anime.
Yeah. They cut this song in the worst way imaginable for the OP, and I think that's a real shame.
And that's why it's an honorable mention. It fucking sucks as an OP, but it's a good song.
I was about to say, is this our first dishonorable mention?
Well, it all depends on your perspective. And the second one, I'm only mentioning it because I think, Chorps, you forgot it. We're only mentioning this one for the amazing name. It's from Gundam Build Fighters, and it's Infinity by the band Swanky Dank.
Yes!
I forgot about Swanky Dank!
And while I was looking through the OPs, or the EDs rather, I found out that they also did an ED for Black Clover, so Swanky Dank really had a hit year in 2018.
I'm glad someone remembered Swanky Dank.
Yeah.
Someone's gotta, right?
He just bought swankmemes.com. Oh yeah. I don't know if either of you get that reference. At some point this year, not too long ago, Elon Musk tweeted, just bought stankmemes.com. Oh yeah.
Oh no.
Is this right before he got fired?
No, it was way afterwards. So I guess he's really...
nice.
He really managed to climb his way back up after that.
God bless. I'm glad.
Yeah. Anyway, my actual winner for Best OP of the Year is Two Feathers from Hanebado.
Alright, hell yeah.
Do you agree? Or is yours a different one?
I definitely agree that's very good.
Yeah.
And again, like you said, like, the animation and stuff, just very evocative, very cool. Mm-hmm. And I really enjoy Two Feathers a lot. Also as, like, a song.
Right, it is a really lovely song. And one thing that I guess I haven't mentioned yet that I really like about it is the way the parts that are animated on ones are animated, giving you a real old school vibe. Because the one thing that I sort of miss about digital animation is that transitions between frames can look a little too clean. And I think that's good for scenes that are animated at a low frame rate. I think at a really high frame rate, that actually makes the movement feel less smooth because it feels like there's less movement in between frames. And I think that helped this OP really stand out and really, like, makes it more of a just a wower, just something that knocks you out of your seat. And that's super cool. That's why it's my favorite OP of the year.
Alright. Cool. Mine, just for the craft behind it, I'm gonna give to Pop Team Epic. Just because, again, I like the sort of, and this carries on to the show well, where it, like, feels very multimedia. You know, like, every scene in the OP up to the part where, like, they're rotating around and sort of, like, each frame has them in a different outfit of, like, complementary sort of, like, looks, is done, like, there's one where it's, like, sort of, like, paper craft. There's one that's done in, like, a completely different art style, like, set up kind of like the, I don't remember how do you pronounce it, ACBU? Is it Akbu? Like, their particular art style within it where it's sort of, like, sometimes too realistic and sometimes too grotesque. Where like I just feel like it captures so many different feelings that, again, it really sells what Pop Team Epic is, while also giving you no idea what to expect from Pop Team Epic. Which is like about as good as you can do given just like the premise around it, I feel.
Yeah. Did you hear what happened to the person who smashed the TV, by the way?
No.
They got arrested for YouTube crimes.
Best OP goes to that joke.
It's just the same joke every episode.
All right, and Zane, what's your number one?
All right, my number one is His Story by TM Revolution, because I love that they actually use it in the show in a way that makes sense in one of the most ridiculous scenes in the show.
Didn't you also say, like, TM Revolution barely has any lines because he's very expensive, so basically it's just this song?
Yes! Yes, he has the least lines of any of the main characters, which is why he has a talking lute.
Oh, it's so good. God bless.
That reminds me when Square Enix tried to make Gak happen as like one of their dudes, and he was in one of the PSP Final Fantasy games.
And he had Bujin Guy.
What?
He had Bujin Guy as well, the whole game where he was the main character.
Oh, yeah. And at one point, I don't know if this was Square Enix, but someone gave him like his own Game Center CX style TV show where he was just playing retro games, and he was not into it. It was really depressing to watch.
It's so good because you can tell he's trying to do this is so bad, I hate this, but he says it like that. You can tell he's just zero shits as he like does really bad at Mega Man 2.
That's the easiest one too. Come on, man. Step it up.
All right. And where to go from Best OP then into Best ED? So, I'll start this one off, and the first one on...
Alright, get this right. You might want to crack open a dictionary for this one, because it's linguistically complicated.
Oh, this is like a release the spice joke. I get it. Okay,
ED is nuts.
Jordan, I'm so glad to have you back.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Can't express that enough. So, first up on the best ED list for me, I'll be starting this one off, is Star Overhead by The Pillows from Fooly Cooly Alternative. I did not tune into the Fooly Cooly sequels this year, but always down for some more The Pillows.
Hell yeah.
And what I like about the alternative one is it's sort of done in a very like sort of cutesy, chibi art style, but it cuts between sort of like the fantastical sort of like Fooly Cooly stuff, like, you know, like knocking back meteors with a guitar and shit, and like, you know, all the motorbike stuff, and also intercuts it with this is like a stop motion thing where they've cut out like dioramas to do like animation of the chibi characters, like running across various like areas in Japan that I assume are in the show, like the beach and like through like sort of a busy intersection and stuff. And it's a very like charming sort of thing. Like when it comes to endings, it's a real come down from the show, and so you don't always expect as much like animation or like, you know, craft put into them.
Definitely.
But I think that just like that extra touch of sort of doing like the multimedia sort of thing is very cool, and like the fact that it kind of like, you know, like Fooly Cooly does a character progression for this one. It's like as they do more of the like stop motion stuff as it's running through, like you can see them get further and further across the screen until they reach the very end. And so I think it's like just a very cute sort of a very cute and like entertaining sort of way to do the ending. Then I have from Hanebado, I have High Stepper by Yuiko Ohara. I think that Hanebado just had like a really good OP-ED set.
Totally.
This one it's a little more sort of like hard rock as far as like the ending goes. Like it doesn't let you really come down. It's sort of like the highs of the emotions of the show keep going in as like this fucking tapping guitar riff starts. And all of it is sort of like this almost like color pencil sketch art style. like maybe a little painted, but like very clearly like a less clean than digital. And it's basically a bunch of sort of like screenshots into the life of people. Like halfway through, it's like a fridge basically, and the magnets are holding like different like pictures of all of the characters in various sort of like interactions with each other, like friends, allies, and even like enemies who are sort of like begrudgingly hanging out with each other. But it just shows sort of like where we constantly see their lives, like, you know, on the court. This is sort of like a look into their lives when they're not quite so haunted by the choices they've made in life. Yeah, by badminton.
You know, the shuttlecock does look like a ghost.
You're right. It does. Yeah. And so I really like that sort of like way. It's like, you know, sometimes we get to see them just enjoy themselves, but like this is also like an additional thing, like sort of as the emotions are high, you also remember sort of like that not everything is so bad for these characters. Sometimes they get to have fun.
Wish they'd do that on the show a little bit.
Yeah. Then I have Kakate Koyo, or I think it's Come At Me, by Nakamura Emi from Megalobox. And this is almost 100% held up by the song.
Mm.
It's like a very like acoustic funk sort of song going through it that's got like a lot of energy behind it. And throughout the whole thing, it's sort of like, since the show's about boxing, it sort of does this like boxing advertisement poster sort of look, but like highly neon because it's the future, where it's like, it'll have the main character's name and it'll have like the episode title and everything as it goes down through the credits. And I think that just the song is just incredible.
Yeah.
And I think Nakamura Emi also did the end or the opening to the Laughing Salesman from last year, which was also an incredible song.
Hmm.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I had this down too for one of my best EDs because it's just a really good song. Just sounds good.
Yeah, and like it's cool because it also like, again, matching with sort of the feel of the show, it has sort of like a rap breakdown like stanza within it, like within the verse. That's really cool, and it like comes back a little bit because rapping ends up taking a surprising amount of focus at the end of Megalobox. This is 100% the song. We're just like, I think the song is so good.
It's a good one.
Yeah, it's a good one. Then we have, from March Comes In Like a Lion Season 2, we have I Am Standing by Ruan. And March Comes In Like a Lion really knocks it out of the park, I feel, with OPs and EDs. If not in both music and visuals, definitely in visuals, where it always ties into sort of the conflicts of Rei and sort of the other characters. And this one in particular is a really nice sort of thing about the darkness in his life and the way that they portray that and the way that sort of he breaks through. Like a lot of the songs that they pick kind of start out very slow and somber and like build into something that sounds more hopeful, that sounds more, you know, like a breakthrough. And I think that it really fits Rei's character very well as he continues to develop as a person and sort of find his own happiness.
They definitely managed to carry that bump of chicken vibe from the first season on through the rest of the OPs and EDs, which is good for this show.
Yeah, because that bump of chicken one was like so strong with its like the sort of the drowning visuals and stuff, mm-hmm. and like setting up that same sort of kind of dynamic change. And it's just continued on with that in such a great way. I really love the work that Shaft puts into March Comes In Like a Lion, and I think this ending does a really good job within this season.
I put this on too, and thank you for explaining why in words more eloquent than my own.
It's no problem. And then the last one I have is from Cardcaptor Sakura Clear Card Arc. I put both of the endings on, and I feel like both of the endings play sort of... They play against each other really well, which is why I put them both on. So there's Jewelry by Sayori Hayami and Rewind by Minori Suzuki. And so the first one is sort of it focuses more on the human characters and their relationships and sort of rebuilding the dynamics that you'll remember from the original series of Cardcaptor Sakura between all of the mains. And then Rewind is a very cute thing where it focuses on all of the like little animal mascots that take place in the series. So it's like, here are the humans sort of like having fun and sort of doing the slice of life things that always seem to go awry within the show, but they're just going okay. They can just like cook together and have fun. And then this other one is sort of like all of the animal mascots with like fucking emotions riding high as they just like fight each other constantly to try to be more important than the other one in terms of the narrative. I just think it's like a really cute kind of back and forth touch, and they're both done in sort of this like marker style where the animation isn't like super clean and it moves a lot, but it's still very like charming and cute and like fits sort of a common thematic sort of setup.
That sounds cute.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. All right, Jordan, tell me about yours.
Okay, so for me, EDs are always a little difficult, just because it is simply the case that most of the time they have a lot less effort put into them than the OPs, so it really does come down to the song quite often. Surprisingly, this year that wasn't the case most of the time. My first one is from Kakuruki Circus, and it's Marionette by Lozarina. This one really impressed me because it actually feels a little more like an OP in some ways. It is a full minute and 30 seconds long, and it goes through a sort of musical progress. I feel like a lot of EDs only have one phase to them in a way, just because they only have 30 seconds to a minute. But this one like really builds on a certain way, and then there's a crescendo at the end, and then it gets softer. And I think that really helps make it more interesting, because early on, sort of the first half of the OP is there's a little more melancholy. You get this sort of this wide look of an old dilapidated Japanese house. Then you have a character standing outside in the rain, and they're not looking too good. And then by the time the chorus swells in, you have the circus lights in the background, and it's all colored bright red as opposed to the earlier blue. You have the main character standing there, and they're looking all amazed. And it has a mood to it that you don't really expect from an ED, because usually the ED kind of carries the emotion through from the episode into the very end of the whole video, if you will. And I feel like this ED had more of a mood of its own, and I really liked it for that. I didn't see the show, though, so for all I know, it's a very bad fit.
I hear at the very least that the show is very messy in terms of pacing.
Okay. Maybe if they'd had the extra 30 seconds that they put in the ED, that wouldn't have been a problem.
They could have saved it.
Yeah.
But alas.
My second entry is a strange one, because it's not like... it is an ED, but it was exclusive to one episode. It's from Real Life Kanketsu Hen. And it's Che, full stop, full stop, Re, or Cherry, from Yui, who people might know from her incredibly super popular Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood opening again, which was the very first one. Often rated as one of the best anime openings of all time. This was a really lovely ending, and it kind of came as a surprise because it was so much more interesting than the rest of the EDs from this series, and especially like the regular one.
Because Real Life did the thing where it's like every episode had a different ending, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Most of them, at least. I'm not sure about every episode, but there definitely wasn't like any amount of consistency to it.
Okay.
But this one was really good. I didn't even realize it was Yui at first, so there's no confirmation bias going on here at all. I don't even like Again that much, so leave me alone. But there's a really lovely feeling to it that I find very hard to quantify. It has something about it that is like nostalgia, but for the present. There's a really cute visual early on where we have the group taking a class picture, and then first all the tertiary characters fade out, then sort of the core cast fade out to leave the two main characters standing there, and then they turn around and they look at each other. And that's probably one of the cutest things I saw in an ED this year, and for that alone, I think it would deserve a place on this list. It was just really charming, and it really carried through that episode very well. Like, I think if they'd put this song, not necessarily with the animation, but just even the song alone on a different episode, it wouldn't have worked as well. So very smart stuff, all in all, and I really liked it. Then next up, this one's a real treat, I thought. It's from Conception, another show I don't know anything about.
Look, better for that. Better for it.
All right. Yeah, all I know is that people didn't like it that much. But it is Desires by Manami Numakura. And this is probably like the most lively ED I've seen in a long time. So basically, it's this really loud rock song, like a heavy metal, not a heavy metal, like, I don't know, one of the sort of a darker subgenre of rock, set to what are supposed to be like marionettes that look kind of like paper bears dancing around. And it had, yes?
I just remembered this ED and what it was from the 2 episodes of this show that I watched.
Yeah. So this ED, it just captured me immediately when I saw it. Like, it was just, it's in a way very repetitive, because all it is like is these marionette bears dancing to the song. Early on, they're sort of silhouetted, so it's not really clear what's going on yet. But it is just that for a full minute. But it's just so out there and interesting, and it kind of like clashes. The music kind of clashes with the dancing, because even though there is sort of like a dark tint to the visuals, that doesn't go to quite the degree that the music does. But I really liked it for that. I felt like there was a sort of irreverent discord between the music and the visuals that sort of helps make something feel a little like disturbing or make you uncomfortable, sort of uncanny in a way. And again, maybe that doesn't fit the show, but on its own, I thought that was really neat.
All right, cool, great.
Yeah.
Don't ever look at the show.
Yes,
all right.
Please don't.
What's the problem?
You hear the word, you hear the title conception.
Yes.
What do you think about?
Having sex?
Yes.
Yep. Let me bring back a segment I like, which is reading the episode titles for conception. Episode 1, my child. Episode 2, I want you to have my child. Episode 3, would you try having my child?
Mm-hmm.
Episode 4, secrets in the early afternoon. Episodes 5, I've got so many kids.
It's so a surprising amount happened in episode 4 as the feeling I get from that.
A lot of secrets. Turns out secrets had his child.
Uh-huh. Alright, well.
Anyways, this is bad. Don't watch it.
I guess all the bears symbolize the children that are happy to be alive, and that's why they're dancing.
Right.
Bears symbolize the bear mascot, who is incredibly horny at all times.
And happy to be alive. Let's not...
Alright, so next up on the list, making a reappearance, is Junji Ito collection again. This time it's Otagai no Uchu, by, which is, a parallel universe in English, by Giocho, I think it's pronounced.
Mm-hmm.
This one was kind of interesting because they actually changed the visuals for every episode. It's not very visually intensive ED, so it probably wasn't like that much work, all things considered. But I'm still glad that they did it. So, for example, in the very first episode, you see you get this background of trees, and then occasionally characters will pop out from behind the trees like it's hide and seek, and it's all really nice. It has a soothing, calm mood to it, but in a way that isn't quite comforting. Like there is something mildly freaky about this ED, which I think is perfect for something to bookend the Junji Ito collection or anything by Junji Ito. And the song is like this very soft guitar piece that it has very quiet, pristine vocals, and the guitars just they do a riff and then they just like shut off completely for a second. So it has like in a way something funky to it, but not in a groovy way. It's more like it makes it slightly strange to listen to, and that's really good. I think it was especially fitting for the episodes that ended on a downer note, because it really it carries that along. The episodes that had like a big twist at the end, it didn't suit those as well. But I think trying to suit the Junji Ito collection while still being good is a tall task to begin with. So there you go. It's a really good ED.
Great.
And then the final one is Radiant by Polka Dot Stingray from Radiant. This one's funny because this ED makes me want to watch Radiant, even though I don't actually want to watch Radiant because I don't like it that much. But this ED sells the show just amazingly well. Like, it really makes it seem like this lovely, cute, like young shonen show, because all it is, like, it's a very simple ED. It's just the lead character sitting on their little robot, and it's all in sort of a papercraft style, and they're just flying on their robot to the right, and then occasionally other characters pop up in the background, like the villains pop up, and then the heroes try to swat them away. And it really makes Radiant seem like this cool, like light, fun adventure in a way that I'd love to see more of, and pretty much doesn't exist anymore. And Radiant is that sometimes, but really does mostly sort of fit into the, I guess, the slightly darker tone that we have for modern shonen anime and manga, for that matter. So that was nice, I think. You know, instead of not knowing if the ED fits the anime, for this one, I wish it did a little better. But in like the opposite of the way that you would expect. But it's really good. It's really good, and it's funny and cute. And sometimes that's all you need.
Mm-hmm. Then Zane.
All right. Well, I guess I'm up then. So, I'm gonna give honorable mentions to a couple that are here for very silly reasons. I got a shout out to Inkya Impulse by Hina Kino, Rika Nagase, and Konomi Kohara featuring Ikepi and KSKN from Asobi Asobase for the incredible dissonance between this and the ED, or the OP and this.
Mm-hmm.
For reference, the OP is basically your standard slice of life anime of cute girls doing cute things, and this is death metal.
Very nice.
Love it.
Yes, with the three girls are the three actresses of the three main characters, and it is them singing a very it's got exactly the sort of visuals you'd expect for death metal, which is everything's very liney and flashing, and it is a very ridiculous experience going from the OP to this every single episode, and I just love that incredible dissonance. And then the other one I want to give a shout out to is Freakin' You by Jodeki from JoJo Part 5 Vento Ario, because it's incredible.
Talk about dissonance, am I right?
Yeah. Because it's incredible that every single JoJo ED, or almost all of them, has ended with, every time I close my eyes, I wake up feeling so horny.
Yep.
Because the visuals for this ED are kind of whatever, but goddamn, the song makes it.
It's really good. I can't believe you, I don't want to say wussed out, but decided not to make this one of your actual nominees at the last minute.
That would be because I remembered, oh right, this ED is actually really good thematically and has cool stuff in it. It's not just there because I find it funny, though. I find it really funny.
That's fair.
I still feel like Freakin' You was not like the first choice for part 5, and this is just what they landed on.
Mm.
But I've come to appreciate it more just for the fucking dissonance of the whole thing.
Well, they had their work cut out for them because there aren't really a lot of crossover Italian hits. That's kind of what it would have had to be otherwise, you know?
Yeah.
Well, I know a lot of people were talking about like Gangsta's Paradise and stuff, and like
that would
trying to fit it more to the angle of like the whole Gangstar thing.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I was definitely stuck on the Italian thing because the only thing I was able to think of is, and I don't even know if you two as Americans know this song, but it's Vamos a la Playa.
Oh yeah, Vamos a la Playa.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Wait, is that Italian?
Yes. Well, you wouldn't know because the song itself is in Spanish, but yes, it was originally sung by an Italian artist.
A mí me gusta bailar. Yeah, I know that one.
Yeah.
Classic.
Alright. So for my actual choices, since Torps hit 2 of them already with Kakate Koyo from Megalobox and I Am Standing from March Comes In Like a Lion, my other ones are Buntline Special by Vika Blanca from Double Decker, which has some of the... Which, the animation is also whatever, but the lyrics are fucking incredible. Starting with, I don't give a shit every single time.
Yeah, and the way it does it too, where it's like, it's kind of doing like a little bit of like a slow punk rock, and then it's just, oh, don't give a shit.
Yeah, it's such a good tune to have at the end of this goofy ass police procedural. It's really just charming.
Yeah, no, it's so good.
And then I've got Poppy Pappy Day from Pop Team Epic, which is great because it also has the dissonance of this is what the AD would be like if it was actually a slice of life show. But also, they recorded the song twice with both male and female singers, and that rules.
And sometimes they would record it specifically with the VAs of the season.
Yeah.
But my favorite version of it is the one that they started using near the end of the season, where B-Cub is really into Prepara, this idol series, and so they were able to get his two favorite idols from there to do the ending, and they have a whole talk before the singing part where they're just like, why are we here? And it's like, oh, it's because B-Cub really likes our characters, like, and like uses not like the shipping name, but like the unit name for the two of them before they start singing. And there's also one part where you can clearly tell that one of them like loses breath partway through.
Yeah,
and, like, have to drop out.
The ED for just how it also fits jokes into it too. It's really just charming. And then on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, my last minute addition was Fly Me to the Star by Starlight 99 Gumi, the central cast of Starlight Revue. I like this a lot because the visuals are all like of a crown drawing with crayon drawings. Thanks, tongue. Of basically the cast sort of, the lyrics all feel very contextual. It's always like the focus of the episode that's singing the song at that point. And it kind of like gives an idea of like why they're trying to become the top star, and, you know, it develops their characters a bit more because at being, you know, this show is about musical theater, it tries to have the songs develop the characters more, and that's really cool. And it's also used to stark contrast where a surprise villain is revealed and the ED has no lyrics at all.
Oh, and that's interesting.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's a really, really good ED.
Mm-hmm. So for my winner, I think I have to go with Kakate Koyo from Megalobox. Like, again, just that song hitting the first time, I was like, oh, I really like Megalobox. Because, like, the OP, I don't really care about. Like, that didn't draw me in. But, like, this ED hits, and I'm like, I'm 100% invested in Megalobox just by this song.
I feel ya.
So, for me, best ED of the year is a parallel universe from Junji Ito Collection. Junji Ito Collection so far sweeping all of my awards.
It's the best and worst anime this year, folks.
It is just, there's something about it that makes it such a lovely final note to the show. And considering the fact that I definitely didn't like the show itself that much, it is interesting that the ending always managed to make me feel happy to be listening to it. Maybe not necessarily happy to have watched the episode, but I guess in a way it sort of cushioned the lack of enjoyment I had, and added a final flourish of melancholic appreciation to it all. And I think that carries a lot of value, and it's just on the whole a very well put together, good combination of song and visuals. And there you go.
Yeah, let me tell you, JoJo, good band. Like, I got into them from other stuff and figuring out they did this. It's like, oh shit, that's cool as hell.
Yeah.
Because they do some, like, really cool, like, kind of math pop sort of stuff. And also get to be, like, one of, like, 2 rock bands that have, like, a flautist in their group. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
That sounds
It's
cool.
them and Jethro Tull.
No, there's nothing scarier than a flautist in a rock group. And that's why they got picked for Junji Ito Collection.
Exactly.
All right. And then I guess I'm going with my surprise edition because I forgot how much it ruled. Fly Me to the Star by Starlight 99 Gumi, because I forgot how much symbolism and character development and just effort they slammed into this ED, because dang, it's a lot.
All right, cool. Always glad to surprise stuff like that. I think something happened like that last year with me where I'm like, as I'm talking through the shows for like best anime or whatever, I'm like, you know what? Actually, I've made a much better argument for this one. I'm changing. So, you know, that's what's nice about this format.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of last minute additions, you know, sort of, we got biggest surprises. You know, sometimes I feel like with the way that like they advertise shows and stuff, like it's very easy to know what to expect going into a show. But sometimes you're just blindsided by something being like really good or just hitting you in a way that you didn't quite expect it to.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what this is about.
I also think that in a way we've been conditioned to expect anime to get a lot worse than it initially looks, because I feel like that happens very often. And when the opposite happens, it's a really, really nice surprise because of that.
Yeah, absolutely. There are definitely cases where you like look at a show and you're not like expecting anything at all, but just like word of mouth helps you realize, oh wait, no, actually this is good, and just behind something that sounds really, really bad.
Yeah.
Speaking of, I'll start with Uma Musume, Pretty Dirty. For what feels like an extremely cynical sort of move in sort of the turn things into cute girls movement, and also like making it not only that they are horse racing girls, but also that they are idols, is like 1-2 punch of, ooh, that sounds like it's gonna be bad, but you kind of gotta watch it just to understand what they're doing. And it comes out like feeling really genuine. Like, it's a very nice story about just like self-motivation and like understanding yourself, you know, in the way that like sports anime does. It just also happens that all of the characters are famous racehorses. So it has that, but like it does seem to have a lot of heart to it, and it really goes hard in on its premise. You know, like when they wear their running shoes, they put horseshoes on them. Literally, like half of the foodstuffs in the show is carrots. You know, they literally set in like, oh yeah, everyone runs everywhere because they're really fast at running because they're fucking horses.
This is the show where the one girl is like, oh no, I'm late for school, and then instead of running with a piece of toast in her mouth, she runs with a carrot.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the one.
That's a really good gag. I like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, Uma Musume has a lot of, I feel like a lot of heart and charm to it in a way that you would not have expected from the like advertisement for it that I think came out like 4 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I also put this on my list because, yeah, it has a surprising amount of heart. Like, it plays its premise completely straight, and I think because of that, they were able to bring out some really nice, heartwarming stuff out of it. And weirdly enough, they actually managed to fit in some secret gags based on, like, actual racehorse events. Like, the whole eating contest bit was actually a goof on a race, on actual real race.
Right, like all of the races in the show follow actual results from the real racehorse the real race that happened for it.
Spoilers.
And they also include that in, there's like an eating competition that some of the girls have at like a festival, and that's also decided by like an actual race. Oh yeah, and also like they fit in sort of the quirks of the actual racehorses into the characters.
Yeah, it's great.
Where, like, there's Goldship, the horse, who was known for being, like, kind of eccentric. Like, it would just, like, walk around in circles for no reason before every race in, like, the exact same spot on the pitch. And so Goldship in the show does that. Like, there's so much, like, weird shit to it where it's like, oh, they either clearly did their research or they really love horse racing, which might make sense. But, like, yeah, it's just very cute.
I think what surprised me the most is that it felt like it was just going to be a cash grab anime for another one of Cygames' mobages, but it turned out to be like just a heartwarming sports anime.
Yeah, and the mobile game's still not out, so, you know.
What I wanted to say is, or what I'm wondering is, does the contemporary legend racehorse Fortnite dance make an appearance in this show?
No, a lot of these are older horses. Like, I don't think a lot of the horses that are in it still race or are alive.
I was gonna say, there's also the fact that these are all Japanese racehorses, for the most part.
Do they also have funny names in Japan, or is that a Western thing?
No.
No, they have funny names. It's like Special Week, it's like Goldship, you know, like... You know, they don't have, like, a Pot-8-Os, and they don't have, like, an orb, really. But, like, you look through them, and you still definitely get a lot of, like, oh yeah, they just name racehorses the same way.
Great.
But yeah, I don't think they have a lot of contemporary horses. But yeah, for the most part, they're Japanese. Like, they do have a French horse that shows up, but like, you know, for the most part, they're all Japanese. Okay, I'm gonna go through some of the names real quick so we can talk about them. Just because, again, they do it. We have Manhattan Cafe, We have Seeking the Pearl. We have El Condor Pasa.
El Condor Pasa is a great character, actually.
El Condor Pasa is great because basically she shows up to all of them in like a not like a wrestler's mask, but sort of like wrestler's like a headpiece that goes like goggles over her eyes. Mm-hmm. So she's pretty good.
Yeah. Then she goes like, "Vamos a la playa."
I'm gonna stay by Lar. Yeah. She's an exchange student from America, so she speaks in broken English.
Oh, great.
And, like, that fake bad Japanese accent where, like, everything is, like, enunciated too much and there's not enough, emphasis put on the words.
She's so good.
She's so good. The next surprise I have on here is Sword Art Online Alternative, Gun Gale Online. A big surprise because it's attached to the Sword Art Online name, but I was really entertained by it. And something that comes out later is basically, like, so this was written by the Kino's Journey team, and by the end of it, basically the like main villain, as it were, is someone who is so obsessed with the original, like, so in this world, Sword Art Online happened, like the whole murder thing happened, and this girl almost got into Sword Art Online and joined the killing game and didn't, and she's just been so pissed ever since because basically, like, the way that she lives her life, she feels like she has nothing to live for, so she just wants to fucking die. And it basically, the whole thing is about, like, teaching this gamer to chill out a little bit and, like, accept life for how it is and sort of, like, learn to love yourself. And I think that that's, like, a really fun message in a way, like, not only, like, within the narrative of the story, but also, like, outside, like, for people who are so obsessed with Sword Art Online for, like, that particular part of it is, like, maybe take a chill pill, dog.
Yeah. Stop yelling the N-word to 13-year-olds on HBO.
Right, stop.
Do you remember when she did that?
Broke heated gamer moments. Woke chill gamer moment.
That's what we need more of.
Exactly. And I think, like, just within the other characters, it's also a lot about self-acceptance and self-understanding and stuff. And, like, I think that that's, like, a really good way to take sort of the idea, like, oh, you've created a character in a world that can finally look the way that you feel. Like, it, you know, like, the main character's like, oh, I'm so tall, and it makes her feel hideous, so she, like, gets to play as, like, a cute small girl, and so, you know, it kind of, like, helps her kind of accept who she is. Mm. Yeah, so, like, it's charming.
You know, I didn't like this show that much, but one thing that it did do for me is that it was this year's anime that made me want the keychains that exist in the universe, which is what was it called? Sound Euphonium was in 2016, where I really wanted a Tuba-kun keychain. But this time it was, I like the idea of just being able to, like, buy your weapon from a video game as a keychain. Because if that was possible, I would definitely buy a keychain of, like, the Akimbo 1887s from Modern Warfare 2, or just some other stupid, overpowered weapon from a multiplayer game that makes everybody angry on sight.
Uh-huh. Speaking of guns from it, one thing I also really appreciate is, like, she gets so into the game at one point that she hallucinates basically, like, huge moe anime eyes on her gun as it talks to her.
Yeah, I do remember
as, like,
that.
She works through her own thing, and I think that's really good,
Damn,
too.
About me. One time I played so much Guitar Hero, and you know how, like, the screen is always scrolling up? That when I took my eyes off it and looked at the guac for my nachos, I thought it was moving.
That is a real ass thing.
Yeah, that was scary.
Oh no, I got a full combo of my guac before I can eat it.
And then I shot it with my pink submachine gun to make sure it was dead.
Then next on the list was Planet With, and Planet With is a particular thing where, like, specifically information was withheld on the series so that, like we've talked about, like, the manga and anime could basically come out simultaneously. And so there wouldn't be, like, a lot of spoiler issues between people who want to do manga versus anime or vice versa and still talk about it. And what started out as sort of, like, your very typical sort of, like, mecha revenge story really turned into something much greater in terms of narrative, where it stopped being so much like, oh, this person wants revenge for the injustices brought to, like, his planet, and sort of learning to, in some ways, like, learning the circumstances behind these things and learning to, like, forgive and, like, have empathy towards things that are, like, out of your control.
Yeah.
And also, like, it's a big surprise because you look at it, it's like, oh, this guy has got like a cat mech and he's like with a mate or whatever. What you don't realize going in is also that cat mech is also a real actual cat that devours the pilot in order to turn into a mech. And so like, again, it's just like the absurdity of it is surprising, but then there's so much like heart behind it too. So like it pulls you in two different ways.
Yeah, I also put Planet With down for biggest surprise because it was a huge mystery box going in, and I did not expect a very charming and earnest anime that tried to discuss the cyclical nature of conflict.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that, like, it feels like a 2 or 3 season show that was able to be condensed into, like, 1 season, and not in, like, a way that feels, like, super rushed, but just, like, they cut out all the fluff.
Yeah.
And as much as I wish that there was that fluff, sometimes, like, they do an incredible job with the pacing of the show to be like, wait, that's not the end? And, like, build upon the conflict to, like, change it and, update it.
Yeah, it does a lot. It did a lot with just keeping you hooked, making sure to resolve mysteries and introduce new ones in a very natural and organic way. And I guess the one thing that, I wish that we got more of was a little bit more character development for everybody, just, because of how fast it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I then have Mr. Tonagawa Middle Management Blues on here, a lot because when people think of, like, Kaiji, Kaiji's not, like, a funny series. Kaiji is a very tragic series about a man who basically, like, gets into debt because of a bad contract and constantly has to, like, gamble for his life in order to just live normally. But Mr. Tonagawa does a really good job of sort of, like, flipping the perspective of the show to, like, the behind the scenes of this company that gives Kaiji so much grief, and basically just show, like, just how sort of bumbling and incompetent the company is behind these death games, as are the people that have to play them, in a way that's very entertaining, where it's like, they like fuck up an order where it's like, oh, they bought all these, like, very elaborate tables so they can play their, like, restricted rock, paper, scissors game, but they don't buy any of the electronics for it. So, like when they insert the card, they can't do the count for how many cards are still left so that they can continue with the game and sort of do the mind games. So what they do, and this is accounted as canon, is they have all of the workers for this company sitting inside the tables with, like, manual counters to update which cards come through.
Good.
And they all just have, like, little, like, setups inside where to, like, keep them entertained for 4 hours at a time while the game goes. Like, one of them has a miniature cat cafe in there. One of them's just got, like, a sick gaming rig and, like, just whatever they can do to, like, keep themselves entertained for 4 hours while they do this. Like, it takes some of the teeth out of how menacing it seems without taking away from the actual drama of the games, which I think is really good. And just the way that it plays with sort of, like, characters you recognize from Kaiji and sort of, like, makes them seem a little more human and a little more, like, fun is really nice.
Cool.
And then, also, biggest surprise, Hanebado. First of all, like we talked a little bit before, OP does not reflect the show. You think it's going to be like, oh, they're playing badminton, they're having fun. Again, no one's having fun playing badminton. 0 people have fun until the very end. There's a lot of sort of, like, familial drama and a lot of sort of, like, people who feel like they have to perform in this place because it's all that they know, and sort of the way that sort of gives them their own version of, like, PTSD, and the way that they overcome sort of the baggage that they feel comes with this talent or this skill, and how it turns into being able to funnel sort of all of these emotions into enjoying your craft and, like, finding the fun even when it seems like you're sort of forced into this life. And so Hanebado I found really charming. Not like an anti-sports anime, but definitely like a sports anime that's a less like, God, this game's so much fun, and sort of like, sometimes it doesn't feel fucking fun at all, but you find your own inner peace when you get onto the court, kind of thing.
I have this on my list as well, and I also, like, for me, it's for similar reasons. It wasn't only a surprise because of how good it was, but also because of what it was. Like, when I originally watched it, or when we originally watched it, we thought there was going to be just a companion piece, if you will, to Harukana Received. It's very different, and it definitely outshined that show. And I think the show was really good about portraying the way in which something that is supposed to be fun can overtake you. And that is something that I myself really struggle with. It's very easy for me for something that should just be like a light little thing for my enjoyment or a hobby to turn into an obligation. And in this show, that was portrayed in a lot of like maybe bigger ways than it is in real life, though not necessarily. Like this can all be very real. Like, parental issues, just having like more of a personal obsession, feeling inadequate compared to your teammates. It was all there, and it was all just portrayed and handled in really intelligent ways, and that is way more than I expected to get out of this show. And that's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, the drama definitely feels comparable to things that I felt really attached to before, like the particular drama in Sound Euphonium, right? About the difference between the people who are playing for fun and the people who are very much there to, like, win band competitions and have the utmost seriousness for it, and the way that it, like, changes your perspective on these things that are supposed to be fun. And the same with, like, Your Lie in April, with the way they do, like, performances there. So seeing it in sports in particular, because that is such a more, like, naturally competitive thing, was like really, really cool. And then honorable mention just goes to Zombieland Saga. I didn't watch it, but, like, it clearly, like, hit so many people in this very particular way for, first of all, taking what looked like a horror thing, turning it into a comedy thing, but still, like, having some very, like, heartfelt character stuff, including, like, a trans character that a lot of people responded really positively to because it was treated with a lot of respect and care and sort of, like, understanding for that sort of thing, where it's like, who gives a shit what you on the outside is? It's about what you on the inside is. It's about the you that is important, Yeah. So I think that Zombieland Saga touched a lot of people, and kind of like last year with Kimono Friends, where I didn't watch it, and I don't know if I care to watch it, but I respect that so many people can come together over this show and, like, find something to love about it, either just, like, as, like, a comedy series or something, a little more heartfelt.
I watched 2 episodes of this show, and then I dropped it because the rap battle at the end of the second episode just hurt me in a way. Like, I really just did not enjoy watching it. But the further reception of the show has been so positive that I am thinking about picking it back up at some point. Because what I've seen of the rest of the show does look very interesting.
All right. Let's do Zane next.
All right. So I'm going to go with the stuff that isn't duplicates. So first up is Revue Starlight, which is another show I knew nothing about going in because the description was awfully vague. But then I saw the very stylish, I guess, magical girl-esque transformation from the end of the first episode, and I was like, okay, I'm going to take a look at this and see what this is about. And I did not expect a very heartfelt tale about the difficulties of growing up and trying to commit, and the difficulties of just trying to keep to your craft as you grow and change and interact, and the bonds you have with the people that you perform with and such. It turned out to be a really heartwarming show that just had a lot of effort put into just every aspect of it. It was surprisingly good for me. There were twists that happened that I didn't expect, and just I really liked it. It just came out of nowhere for me. So yeah,
that's great. Yeah, that's one of the ones I, like, kind of regret missing out on, is Revue Starlight, just for the way that, like, you and so many other people have talked about it.
Yeah. And
so I want to go back to it at some point.
Yeah, it's very worth watching. And then next up is SSSS Gridman, which is Trigger doing a sort of reimagining of an old Toku series called Hyper Agent Gridman. And this, I was afraid this would turn out bad because of Darling in the Franxx and none of Trigger's other non-Little Witch Academia productions being that great, but this came out of nowhere and managed to hit a lot of really good emotional notes. It manages to get you to empathize with the villain in a way that I don't think other shows could, and given that the main character's goal changes along the way from the show, from I must defeat the villain to I must save the villain, is just it did it in a way that mirrored the audience's own emotions, I feel. It manages to have, like, a lot of good action, a lot of good scene framing. It really just felt like it came out of nowhere for me, and I think the part that I liked the most is that the Toku battles actually felt like they were shot like Toku battles, just with a lot more good effects because of it being animation and all. It was a really good show that came out of nowhere, and I'm surprised how much I liked it.
Right, awesome.
And then I guess the last thing is Hinamatsuri, which is a goofy comedy about a Yakuza that kind of adopts this weirdly emotionless Esper and the weird bond that sort of forms between the two. But I guess the biggest surprise here is that I didn't expect it to be so heartwarming, with Anzu's whole arc and her character growth and just how much of a good, earnest person she is. It's weird to say this, but this is one of the most heartwarming comedies I've ever seen. It's great.
The show's pretty good, but I liked it a little better in the first season. It was called Mob Psycho 100.
I got it.
Damn. But yeah, I liked Hinamatsuri a lot. I liked its characters. I like how they actually had some character arcs to them. It did a lot of stuff I didn't expect for a comedy show, and I really appreciated all of that.
And then Jordan.
And then me. Okay, so first of all, I have Violet Evergarden, which wasn't really a surprise in the traditional sense because I actually had incredibly high hopes for this season initially. My opinion on KyoAni has shifted dramatically since my teenage years, because at the time with Haruhi and Keion, I thought they were just at the top of the mountain. And then since then, a big problem they've had is that they just, they have seemingly all the freedom in the world to just make these amazing shows. Like, their visuals are always on point. They have total creative freedom. And just again and again, what they do is they make these shows set in just the most lifeless, unimaginative fantasy realms imaginable. Like, Chunibyo, Myriad Colors Phantom World, that other show that I don't even remember the name of, the park something?
Amagi Brilliant Park.
Amagi Brilliant Park. All just they take place in these vibrant fantasy worlds that just suck ass. And I thought with Violet Evergarden, it seemed like it was going to be more of a character piece set in something in a time period in history, sort of resembling one in the real world. And it looked like it was going to be beautiful, and it is. It's one of the best looking TV anime I've ever seen, with a traditional style at the very least.
Every frame looks like it cost $1 million to make.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when the metal hands are out. If you see,
that's $2 million.
Yeah, you're right. But the early episodes are pretty rough. The world ends up not being as interesting as you might imagine. They don't really lean into the World War I imagery very much, and just the main characters' characteristics don't allow for very good character-based storytelling, which is a problem in this kind of show. But it gets a lot better after, I think, episode 4 or 5. Because as it turns out, the first couple of episodes, or most of them at least, were all original stuff. And after that, it starts following the source material a little bit, and that's when it really comes alive. Because this is, it's mostly an episode-by-episode story. And early on, the scenarios themselves aren't even that great. And I think that's a shame when, coming up with a scenario good enough for a 22-minute episode shouldn't be that hard, right? But it is, apparently. And then, but the second half of the series, all the scenarios are killer. We start to learn more about the characters, and that allows them to, come alive a little bit more. The cast gets made a little broader as the history of the world is filled in. And that just allows everything to feel a little more vibrant, and for the writing and just the events that occur to live up to how pretty the show is. And after the first 2 episodes really disappointed me, I did not expect the show to go in that direction, but it did, and that's great.
Right. Yeah, because I definitely fell off before the episode 4 mark, because it definitely felt just, like you said, it felt like a disappointment to the world building, what they were doing.
Yeah, totally. Then my second show, Hanabata, we already covered. And then the third one is Garo Vanishing Line. Initially, the trailer for this really sold me on it, but then I found out that it was a Garo show, and I don't like Garo that much, so I thought, okay, maybe I'll skip this one, actually. Really just adding another word to the title is the only thing that made me less interested. But I believe it was our OP watching session that got me to turn around on that, because the first and second OP both really caught my eye. And I decided to watch the show, and it was really solid. I think it really outdid the first season of Garo. I don't know anything about the second. It's just a really cool, old-fashioned action show. It's just about, it's just badass dudes and hot chicks killing demons, and that doesn't sound like the kind of thing that would be interesting to me, but it was just a really good one of those. All the characters were fun, and all of the art was really cool. It could be a really good looking show when it wanted to be. Unfortunately, the 3D in it doesn't look that good. It's very poorly integrated most of the time. But when they really do pull out all the stops, they do pull out all the stops. The whole house goes dark. And that's when the show shines. And yeah, early on, I did not expect it to be that cool. And then it turned out it was.
Yeah, Garo's Vanishing Line, just really good.
Yeah. The next on the list is Rascal Does Not Dream of Bunny Girl Senpai. I don't know if that's the official English title.
That is.
I think it is.
It is? Oh, that's a real shame.
Yeah.
It's a real, but you thought there is never a girl online.
Yeah, no kidding.
Word salad sort of shit.
So this is one of those shows where I thought beforehand, looking at the trailer and the description, this could either be really cool or it could get really skeevy. Because it's about a guy who meets a girl, and the first time they see each other, she's in a Playboy bunny costume. And that's really, it was a very mysterious show, so it's kind of all the viewers knew going in, unless they knew about the source material. So really, the tips could still be, the scales could still be tipped one way or the other. But thankfully, it got tipped in the direction of being very good. There is still sort of an element of being a little creepy and pervy from time to time, but I feel like that's all in universe and built from the perspective of the characters. So in my opinion, it was pretty acceptable here. And it was just a show that featured a lot of really, really good character moments. It was basically all character moments, really. And just the interaction between the two main characters was so good. They go through all these fairly mature themes of what the value is of being seen and being famous versus being obscure, and what it does to you when you don't get to have the human relations that you'd like to have. And I expected the show, if the show was going to be good, I expected it to delve into that, but I did not expect it to do it so well, and that's why it really caught me off guard in a good way.
Yeah, I definitely heard a lot of good press afterwards, after being really turned off by the description. But it seems like it turned out really well, and just hearing it from you, it seems like it's pretty cool in the way that it grapples with that sort of stuff.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I've heard much the same from a few other folks that have watched it, that it's actually surprisingly good despite the really awkward sounding title.
Yeah. Then my final show, and this is my real dark horse pick, it's Darling in the Franxx from Trigger Animation.
Yeah, justify yourself.
Yeah, so here's the thing, right? I hopped onto the show pretty late because I believe it aired in winter, so the first season of the year.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I watched it until summer break. So I was going in fully ready to only look at it for the cool animation. I thought, okay, the show's a hot mess. It's going to be garbage. It's going to be way too horny. This is going to suck. And at times I think it does, but I was actually surprised by how thoughtful the series was and how thematically rich it was, especially early on, because it is a very sexually driven show, and because it's about teenagers, there's a very weird thing about it. But in my opinion, it sort of hits that Evangelion level where it's more about the sexuality than about being sexy. I really like the way the early episodes handled sort of this messaging about how in the real world, we sell teenagers sex without really selling them caring mutual relationships. So literally, the Franxx themselves are basically stand-ins for having sexual intercourse, and then the teens are really good at that. But then once they're put into a dormitory together, like they're so awful at just getting along with each other. And that clearly like gets in the way of them being able to like pilot the Franks correctly. Like their interpersonal drama gets in the way of the action quite frequently. And they're taught how to, like the Franks, as it were, are constantly being marketed to them, air quotes. And they get better at that. But even though like their interpersonal relationships are so terrible and it's a constant source of friction, the adults don't really seem to care about that. And I think that was like just such a good look at the way romance is communicated to teenagers. And also it looked really good. Like the action was super cool. Like that's a secondary thing I liked about it. But yeah, I feel like this show, there was more to this show than people gave it credit for. And that really surprised me, especially because Trigger Show's usually not the best for that kind of thing.
Did you complete it?
No.
Okay. I'm asking because from what I understand, like all of your stuff is valid, but also it sort of just like goes fucking off the rails at some point. So,
well, you know,
that.
biggest surprise doesn't mean it has to be good all the way through, you know?
Right. I'm not saying that. I was just curious because of your perception, did you finish it? That's all.
Okay.
But like you do go over some things that I think were fairly evident from the couple episodes I watched, but just like I think that the way that it was put together really turned me off from it. But like there is definitely a lot of good stuff to be got from like what you said, you know?
Yes.
Yeah, you've made me sad because I wish this show stuck to those themes to the end because it would have been really good.
We'll have time to talk about that.
Yeah.
But before we get sad, let's count down our favorite surprises from this whole thing. And as far as the biggest surprise goes, definitely like 100% biggest surprise I had was how much of, again, very like heartfelt and very genuine sort of series Uma Musume ended up coming out as. Again, it could have been a cash grab. It could have been like ironic in a way, like just like, oh, yep, they're girls and horses, and that's like the whole thing that they rely on for the humor. But no, it's like it's very genuine. It's very heartfelt. It has like a story to tell within the confines of like a sports series, more or less. It just also happens that then they do idol stuff after the races and also their horses. Like, it feels so much like they've built this gimmick to draw people in, and then they just wrote a normal show. And I think that that's, like, great. I think that Uma Musume, like, it may not be the best show I watched this year. Like, I don't think it shows up in my top 5. But, like, as far as what it was, I was very happy to find out that it's just, like, a solid show without having to be a commercial, without having to be too, like, jokey about itself.
I like that. I like when someone gets commissioned to do something that is really just, like, factory work, something they probably don't want to do or maybe don't want to do, and then making the most of it. Like, still putting some artistic merit into it. It's great.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, alright. My biggest surprise is the same thing. It's Uma Musume Pretty Derby, because I didn't expect it to be really as charming as it was, is that I would get attached to some of the characters as much as I did, that, you know, it just turned out to be a really charming, heartwarming sports anime, and I'm glad that the director of that show put the same amount of effort into Uma Musume that he did into Hinamatsuri. It's really good.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, this was a really difficult one to pick, and I think really you could go for any of the ones except for maybe Darling in the Franxx. But I think in the end I still have to give my top pick to Rascal Does Not Dream of Bunny Girl Senpai. Just because it was better than my most positive imagination of it was of what it could be was. Because like I said, I thought it could either be bad or good, and then it turned out it was good, but it was even better than I was expecting that good to be. Like, I thought it was just going to be an okay slow burn character piece, but it was a slow burn character piece that just had a lot of fantastic interaction, that was paced super well. It was good looking, a lot of themes that were touched on very well. And that's something you don't get out of every show, and especially not shows that have a premise that might turn you off.
Okay, yeah. So, now it's time to talk about our biggest disappointments. You know, in the opposite version of Big Surprise, maybe we come in with high hopes, maybe we come in just with, like, even just, like, middling hopes, and it still fails to live up to what we expect, you know, on the, you know, from what it shows from, like, the PVs and stuff. So let's talk about that, and start with Jordan.
All right, so, just for context, for the viewers, we have a big Google Doc where we have all our entries put down. And for one of these, I have one of them listed as secret entry because I felt that it was important to keep, I guess, like the narrative of discussion consistent. Because that first entry is Darling in the Franxx. Because even though I loved, let's say maybe the first 6-7 episodes of this show, after that it like immediately and drastically falls apart. Like characters just get derailed, themes get dropped. The fights still look good, like pretty much every episode still has its big wow moment, but the context they're in just gets way less interesting. And also I think just the initial wow factor, just the way in which something catches you when it starts because it's all new, like that slowly fades away, and then they don't find anything new to replace it except for just horrible writing. So yeah, I was surprised to see that there was more to this show than I thought there was going to be based on the general reaction to it, but that did not last as long as I hoped.
Zane can talk more to that because he finished the damn show.
That's a real shame.
But all of us have Darling in the Franxx on here for some capacity or another.
Yeah, alright. So, I personally think that the show kind of fell off for me when it decided it wanted to be Gurren Lagann for no real reason. Because that's what happened for, like, the last third of the show, and it was... It frustrated me that it just kind of dove off the deep end instead of sticking to its themes of weird teens just kind of puzzling out their own emotions, and Zero just kind of trying to understand her own humanity and such. But nope, we're just gonna be Gurren Lagann again. Turns out the Klaxosaurs were actually protecting you from the evil space Illuminati, just like Gurren Lagann. God. And then also in the end it's, oh yeah, and everybody had babies. Please have babies. Signed Shinzo Abe.
He does it
God
again.
bless him. He's trying so hard.
He's trying so hard.
I bet, like, originally they were going to have Gangster's Paradise for JoJo's Part 5, and then Shinzo Abe burst into the Studio David offices and told them to use Freaking You for the ED instead.
Get those teens horny!
But yeah, I thought that it was going to go somewhere, but nope, it wanted to be Gurren Lagann, and that just... bleh.
Yeah, even though I dropped it really early on, I could see, like, again, it was capturing some of those themes that Jordan was talking about, but I, early on, was just like, oh, this is really clumsy, and, like, also kind of embarrassing how on the nose it was sometimes, just, like, the doggy-style fucking mech piloting was just like, oh, come on.
That was hilarious to me, how blunt they were about it.
It was funny, but then I also just, like, roll my eyes, come on the fucking line, are you for real? Yeah, that's, I feel like that's the narrative, Darling in the Franxx.
Mm-hmm.
So second on my list is Golden Kamuy, and this is just because the show did not live up to the manga. I'm a big fan of the manga. I've been reading it since even before it got an official release by Viz. It's a great story. It looks lovely. It's got good characters, good drama, good tension, good humor, and all of that is still there for the most part in the show. But the show just isn't very good. Like, it comes up short just a little bit in basically every way imaginable. Like, it doesn't look that great. It's paced a little bit weirdly. The voice acting isn't really all that. And what that makes for it is a show that isn't really worth watching because you would be better off just reading the manga. And I think there's something that always needs to be said for that, because an anime can be so much more than a manga on average. Like, I think adapting a manga into an anime means you can do a lot, you can add a lot of substance, whereas the other way around, it usually leads to a reduction of substance unless you really change something. So this was just a real bummer, because I thought I was going to see something I liked repurposed in a new medium, and it was less than that. That's a real shame.
I've heard that opinion from other manga readers as well.
Yeah.
Maybe, since I've been sitting on the first volume of it for I think a full year now without reading it, maybe I'll finally get around to that to understand Golden Kamui.
I hope so. Then next on the list, I have Fully Coolly Progressive. I don't know which of the two shows I was supposed to watch first. Like, I didn't realize that was a thing at the time. But I watched both of them eventually. I put this one on the list because it was the first one I watched. And in my opinion, the worst of the two. And I was just hoping that they were going to be able to just like recapture some of the magic of the original show. And instead, what they did is they just kind of went for a similar tone and structure as the original show, but with a lot less energy. When the original trailer for Fully Coolly 2 and 3 dropped, I was really surprised to see that it was just going to look like a modern, sleek digital anime that felt like a real betrayal of what Fully Coolly is. And I don't really feel any differently about the final show. It just feels like maybe they wanted to recapture the success and not the appeal of the original show. And in doing that, they just made something that didn't need to be made and doesn't really have any greater value, in my opinion. Then next on the list, I have Hinamaru Zumo. This is another manga that I am somewhat fond of. It's not great, but I think it's pretty fun. It's actually a manga that's not very popular in Japan. It's consistently among like the bottom of the Shonen Jump popularity lists. And general theory has it that the only reason it's being kept alive is to sort of an attempt to like reignite interest in the sumo wrestling sport, because it is like Japan's big national sport. And I think it's maybe a lot better than the Shonen Jump, Weekly Shonen Jump readers give it credit for. It's got that heart and that fiery spirit that any like good classic Shonen Jump series needs. And the anime still has that too. It has it in spades, I think. The problem is just that the anime is paced really, really poorly, and it just ended up being almost excruciating to watch. Like, I think sumo wrestling is already a fairly slow sport, so you need to, if you're gonna make a story about it, you need to give it that kick. And I think the manga had that kick, and the anime doesn't. And maybe that's just because you can read a manga at your own pace, and in an anime you're stuck to the pace of the animation. But yeah, the timing of everything and the length of all the scenes just felt so much worse in the anime than in the manga, and that was a real bummer. Chorps, you watched it too. What do you think?
Yeah, no, it's very slow. I think that's like the most damning thing about it. Like in other sports shows, at least they're doing sports more, but I think sumo does not lend itself very well to the anime format where like you still have to keep up the sports parts. There's like practicing and stuff. So like, and it's such a quick sport as well.
Yes.
So I think just the way that it was directed just did not work for probably what the appeal of sumo is.
Yeah, because when you're reading a manga, like just a big panel where there's a lot of movement and someone getting like slapped onto the ground, that's all you need. But for an anime, that can't be the whole action scene, and it is too often in this show. So it's just they didn't put enough work into transitioning from one medium to the other, and that's this show's big problem. And then my last entry, this is one that I think might make you two and maybe listeners unhappy. The first half of My Hero Academia Season 3. This went beyond how far I'd read in the manga, and I did not expect for like just the breaks on the general narrative to be hit so quickly and just to go into effect so suddenly. Like after the what's he called? Stain?
Yeah.
That's the boss before. Like the Stain arc, I wasn't super into. Like it was a little more grim than I would have liked, but I was definitely still invested. And like the return of Mr. Gohands just was not something that I was interested in. And it's like basically all the character development of Class 1A is ground to a halt just so that we can repeat the first arc of the series with slightly different stakes. And that was just not what I was looking for. Like basically nothing happens to any of the characters, like as far as emotional growth goes, except for Deku. But a lot of characters get a lot of time to do stuff, and it's all just not that interesting. Like you have the part in the intro where Gohan's boss reaches out through him through the television. He's like standing up to the screen and begging for approval. And those 3 seconds are, I think, a better approach to like furthering this character's development than what they actually did in the show. And this season really took the wind out of my sails as far as my enjoyment of My Hero Academia goes. Even though the second half was a lot better, so it was just this part.
So are you saying just up to the end of the like training camp arc, or are you including like all the stuff with All for One?
No, it was up to the end of the well, I guess there's no hard split to it, because I think it does carry into part of the All for One storyline. But while it's in there, it does pick up steam again at some point.
Okay, that's what I was kind of curious, because you say it's like the first arc, and some of that is true for the camp stuff. I just wasn't sure if that built all the way to the end of the season.
No, it does, yeah.
Okay, all right. I get that perspective. All right, then let's have Zane talk about some disappointments.
All right, well, we already went over Darling in the Franxx, so I'll just go with Thunderbolt Fantasy Season 2, which is just... So, for the most part, I enjoyed Thunderbolt Fantasy Season 2. I'm going to start that off with that. But then, goddammit, Urabuchi, please stop. Please stop killing off female characters. Please stop doing that. Especially when that character has the most compelling arc in the show. It just sort of... It didn't quite kill my enjoyment of the rest of the show, but it certainly wasn't as exciting or interesting as everything that came before, because it was just Urabuchi killing off the most interesting character in the show to just keep things moving along, and please stop doing this, Urabuchi. Please stop. You're good at writing everything else. Why this?
Sometimes I feel like Gen Urabuchi should only be allowed to write the first part of something, like up until the first finishing point, then hand it off to other people.
Sometimes I feel like that's true.
Yeah. Well, I guess that didn't really work for Psycho-Pass either, so maybe there is no ideal solution there, but man.
Yeah, once he was off of Psycho-Pass, I feel like Psycho-Pass went just like the wrong direction.
Absolutely, yeah.
He needs someone to tell him to stop.
Absolutely. Just in general.
Yeah, maybe he just needs like a co-writer.
Yeah.
Someone to work with him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's basically what I have to say about that. I'm still kind of disappointed in it. I'm still excited for Season 3, but I'm just a bit more cautious about it now. And then, next thing I have up on here is Professor Layton Cat's Mystery Solving Files, which is one of the few shows that I dropped last year because they kept reusing cases from the game, and it was just really uninteresting. And add that to the fact that they had one episode of real plot per 13 episodes, and it just got really frustrating, especially after they did 4 cases in a row from the game. And I was just like, I'm done. I don't care anymore by the time they started doing original stuff again.
And then Phoenix Wright shows up.
Like, the game only has like 5 or 6 cases, right? So like, they really like fucking load them all in together.
No, it had like 11 or 12.
Oh, did it?
Yeah.
Okay. I still hadn't finished it, so I wasn't sure. But like, still, that's a significant portion.
Yeah, it's really frustrating, and it also frustrates me that they probably resolved the plot mysteries that they brought up at the start of the game, and they're probably going to resolve that in the show.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, that's that. And then, the only other show that disappointed me was Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains, which I think Sharps and I can both express pretty well.
We need 2 more hours for this podcast. No, but yeah, Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains just like, man, could have been so cool. It followed sort of the progression of the first 3 Yu-Gi-Oh! Series, where it's sort of like, once they got to Zexal, it's sort of like, oh, they make this really goofy sort of one that's sort of like, you know, it's very much more for children. Then the second one kind of like builds upon that, and the third one's sort of the one for people who grew up with Zexal, where it's like, oh, it's trying to do something a little more mature, kind of like 5Ds, and it just falls flat in so many ways, predominantly in that it follows the Zexel thing of where the main character just isn't allowed to lose, which fucking sucks. Because that just means there's no drama. Like, yes, they always won in other series, but, like, they could lose is the thing. So, like, there is still some drama to that. But he can't lose, and also he's, like, the most boring, unchanging character in the series.
Oh. How many, like, supporting characters are there that also duel?
Okay, so let's see. Well, so at the time we got Soulburner, who's a better character because he deals with his baggage. We have Blue Angel, who is the requisite girl who's very good at dueling and uses a really good deck and just constantly gets bodied because she's not important enough. We have Go, who turns crazy and evil in the second season because he's so mad that people beat him.
Okay, so, like, a surprising amount.
Yeah, so, like, there's totally a worthwhile supporting cast for him, but all of them are just there to support Playmaker's man angst. And it really sucks, because, again, so many other characters are, like, trying to help him, like, grow as a person, and he's like, but fuck that.
I can start to say when I had my doubts with this episode, and it's during the final confrontations of the first season, where I was like, oh hey, Aoi's gonna beat up the guy who brainwashed her before. That's great. That shows her character growth. No, she loses.
She gets super bodied.
Yeah, and then Playmaker has to win for her, because Playmaker is the main character. And then, after that, Go duels the main villain, Revolver, but obviously he can't win, so Go loses, and Playmaker has to beat Revolver.
That feels like how they'd handle it in, like, the video game adaptation.
Right, absolutely. Where it's like, your OC has to do it.
Yeah, and then they don't even get to develop Aoi and Go in the second season because they introduce Soulburner, and they spend the first big chunk of the second season being like, hey, here's Soulburner. He's the cool new guy. He also has a cool advanced AI, and his first few duels are beating Aoi and Go to show that he's better than them. And it's just so frustrating.
Whenever Soulburner's not on screen, people should be asking, where's Soulburner?
God, they just...
Yeah, it's no good.
It's just so frustrating, and it could have been so much better if they didn't introduce Soulburner and just develop Go and Aoi, and they just don't. No, the main characters have to be special, which I think you mentioned was a problem in a different Yu-Gi-Oh! Series.
Yeah, and just, like, the way that it goes, it's like, you know, there are things to be interested about with Playmaker, but the character himself seems so incurious about everything. He's just like, but does that further my revenge plot? No? Well, fuck that. So, yeah, man, Vrains is bad.
Yeah.
Seems every other Yu-Gi-Oh! Show just has to be a little disappointing.
Not as good.
Yeah. Because it's all the odd-numbered ones, in my opinion, are the ones that are really special.
And so, it's already been covered, Darling in the Franxx and Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains. As far as other disappointments I had, Violet Evergarden. So, Jordan says that, like, after episode 4, it gets more into the novel stuff and it's a lot better. I did not make it that far. I made it about 3 episodes in, and just, like, it was really boring. I feel like it wasn't taking advantage of a lot of the things they set up about the world that could be interesting. And, like, especially as it seems to lay more into sort of the themes of, like, oh, this guy who basically adopted a girl and turned her into, like, a war machine has these, like, weird romantic feelings towards her. And also, like, there's an arc about, like, how age shouldn't matter in love, just kind of gives off a bad vibe where I'm like, even though this looks like the most beautiful anime in the universe, I don't know if I could, like, sit through it. So, yeah. I was really disappointed by it story-wise.
I'll say, even though I ended up liking the show in the end, 4 episodes, that's still nearly a third of the show. And if that much of it is not good, then I think that alone warrants it being disappointing.
There is a reason the 3-episode test exists.
Yeah, you'd hope by 3 episodes something would be fixed by it.
Something would happen.
Yeah. I then also put on Tada Can't Fall in Love here, where, like, I was really excited for it because it was a romance series being done by the Monthly Girls Nozaki-kun staff, and they had handled that adaptation really well, where it was, like, a little more comedy focused, and this one seemed like it was going to be a little more romance focused. Like, it seemed like it could be a really interesting sort of, like, kind of flip side to Nozaki. And I just feel like it falls into that romance trap of trying to make a character just like a pervert with a heart of gold. And like, that's his whole thing. And I think that just every joke that involves him is so tired at this point. And like, it wasn't great to begin with, but just like, there's nothing more you can do with pervert characters. It just, that's how it goes. And so it just pulled everything down in such a way that like, because he kept popping up, I couldn't stand to watch more.
The weird thing about the pervert character is that his character arc, or like that whole element of him, sort of gets resolved in one of the pretty early episodes, but then they just immediately revert that character development and make him a pervert again.
And I like all the other characters, it's just him, and he pulls it down so much, because again, yeah, like, they have a point where it's like, he only acts out this way because he's got, like, issues with, like, intimacy and just, like, being honest with himself about, like, romance and stuff. And so, like, that's fine, but then, yeah, they just don't, they go back on that, and it sucks.
Yeah. I forgot that this show was by the Nozaki-kun theme, and within that context, it is definitely quite disappointing, because that was a great show.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the last disappointment I had was Banana Fish, where I think before I said it, I thought it was like a 30-something volume series that got fit into 24 episodes. It's a 27 volume series that got fit into 24 episodes, so I don't know how much they may have cut out from it, but it still feels like there's just like, as an adaptation, it feels like there's so many things missing in terms of like character development to make way for the fucking just
homophobia.
Like incredibly dense plot. Not the homophobia, though there is some of that. Though some of that's only added by the translation, which is an issue also.
I did not know that. Oof.
Like, they don't actually use, as far as I understand, like, none of the slurs used are in the original. That is a punching up by the subbing staff at Amazon.
Oof.
Yikes.
But, like, everything else with it is, like, there's so much plot that it seems like it gets in the way of the character developments for, like, the relationship between Ash and Eiji. Like, I feel like individually they both have very strong arcs, but it feels like they sort of exist together exactly enough for you to feel like maybe they have a relationship together without building on that. And I also think that, like, the change to make it, like, modern day just doesn't do anything, and in some ways kind of detracts from it, because it no longer feels like, oh, it's like a pulpy series from this very particular sort of time where this sort of thing made more sense. It now feels, like, out of place and sort of, like, like,
it feels socially out of touch.
Yeah, it feels socially out of touch. It feels more tasteless.
Yes, absolutely.
Than it would if it were still like, oh, this takes place in like the 70s or 80s, where like this definitely like fit the genre staples of pulp more at that time. So, with that said, Jordan, what's the biggest disappointment of the year?
So this was a tough pick for me, because when Darling in the Franxx eventually inevitably imploded, I was really disappointed, because before I thought, oh, this show is actually way better than everybody said it was. I'm gonna ride this out, like this big surprise breakout anime, and I'm gonna enjoy it all the way through, and then prove the haters wrong with my 500-page essay about why the doggy style mech anime is actually fantastic. and then it was not. It was just like it fell from grace so quickly, and that just sucked. But the same is true for My Hero Academia, and that was a show that I had liked for longer before that, and that I had liked without any bias going into it, and that made the pain feel more serious. Like, I did not expect this series to have such a sudden and strong lull in quality. And that was a real bummer. Like, I almost didn't make it through this season. I wanted to, like, say to the Anime View and crew, can we drop this? And for a show that had such a, like, killer first two seasons, That's unbelievable. So that's the winner. That's the biggest disappointment for me.
Damn.
Yeah. Also, there was too much diaper bullying this season.
That's a complaint I can get behind. Alright. My biggest disappointment was Thunderbolt Fantasy Season 2 for my enjoyment of that series coming to a complete dead stop because Urabuchi can't stop killing women, and he killed the most compelling character in the series. God damn it.
That really will take the wind out of your sails.
Yeah.
Like, a woman gets killed.
Yeah. And Gen Urabuchi does it right in front of your eyes.
Yeah.
He's holding the knife in his hands as he cuts the strings of the puppet.
I'm broadcasting live to every living room in the world to show you this.
It just hampered my enjoyment of the rest of the season, and because of that, it's my biggest disappointment for just making me cautious about the rest of about Season 3 going forward, and just killing my enjoyment of the rest of Season 2.
Now, I'm gonna cast myself a little bit. The biggest disappointment was Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains.
Hey, man.
And I'll tell you, it's not only because the character writing is bad. It's because, let's look back on Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds for a second.
That's what I'm talking about.
Crow was supposed to be a villain. He was supposed to turn bad and die. But his deck was so popular and everyone loved his cards so much that they literally wrote in a change to the plot so that he would become popular and cool and a good guy. And he derailed several other plots for other characters. And in Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains, they had Go Onizuka, whose deck was good enough to go to Worlds. They had Ghost Girl, whose deck was good enough to go to Worlds. They had, and win Worlds, in fact. Then they had Blue Angel, whose deck was good enough to get second place at Worlds. And yet, they will not bend over backwards to write any of those characters to be better, so fuck Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains. Here's my complaint. These decks are so good, and they keep being good. And they won't do the same that they did for fucking Crow.
Crow did not deserve it.
And Crow is a garbage man.
Crow sucks, dude. And his deck isn't even cool. Like, it's so lame. Why do people like it?
And so, that's my complaint with Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains. Please tune in for my dissertation later.
How was the new mechanic? Like, I'm sure they added a new mechanic to the card game.
Links? Links are cool.
Links is how you do, I summon a bunch of monsters in one turn, but legally.
Right. Yeah, no, it's supposed to balance out other, summoning styles, and it's, pretty cool, actually. I like it a lot.
Nice. Well, that's a silver lining, I suppose.
Yeah, no, I think the game has changed in some very interesting ways, and so, the actual game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Biggest surprise, Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains, biggest disappointment. Alright, let's come up for a bit, and let's just talk about best production. Let's talk about the shows that we think just looked good, sounded good, really, stuck to a theme or idea, and really sold its premise. And let's start with Zane on that one.
Alright, well, I'm gonna start off with, Thunderbolt Fantasy Season 2, to get back to that. Despite the fact that it disappointed me a lot, it's still a really impressive piece of production that they did all these special effects, that they got the puppets to do all this stuff. It's still a really impressive piece of media in and of itself that they put all this work towards, that it's still this weird miracle of Gen Urabuchi finding this puppet company and being, hey, this is really cool, I want to show this to everybody else, and so that's how Thunderbolt Fantasy was born. And they actually managed to have a puppet do the anime pushes up glasses with finger thing, and it owns.
Nice.
Shout outs to the wuxia artists out there.
Yeah.
Because the hands are static in wuxia, right? So do they get a special mold where they have the ring finger and the middle finger together to do that?
Yeah, I think so.
They created a new hand just for this.
That same puppet also had creepy smiles where they showed its teeth. It ruled. God. But yeah, Thunderbolt Fantasy is just a really impressive endeavor. And then after that, I'm gonna go with Megalobox, which just looks like a long-lost anime that fell out of the 90s.
Absolutely. I was gonna say the same thing.
Yeah.
And it really sells that by the... I can't think of another word to describe it but bold. The bold decision of the director to be so we drew it at 720p, which is the normal the normal size of the frames in modern anime. we shrunk it down to 360 and then blew it back up.
It does. I actually didn't know that, but I did think it looked a lot like that.
Right, so it looks a little blurry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some scenes in the show reminded me of like old bad VHS to DVD transfers.
Yeah,
and they are.
Yeah, I just love that it looks just so gritty and gross, and it really just fits the whole show. It's really just good.
And you can tell that there's just so much craft behind it too. Like, it takes, again, a bold move to like look at the craft on display for Megalobox, like the fighting scenes and stuff, and then go, but what if for thematic purposes we made it look bad?
but like let it be known that there are still a lot of parts that do look like genuinely good. They're like super well animated.
Mm-hmm.
All hand drawn, I'm pretty sure. So, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, Megalobox just looks so good, and like, again, that stylistic choice, I understand why they did it, and I respect it.
Same here. I appreciate it a lot. Alright, and then next up on my list, I'm gonna go with Pop Team Epic for being just a miracle of circumstance in a completely different way than Thunderbolt Fantasy was, because it's just such a mishmash of incredibly different styles, and also getting 2 sets of VAs for every single episode. The Akbu parts, the Hoshiro Girl Drop joke previews, the felt songs. There's just so much love that went into everything into this show. It's just incredible how visually distinct a lot of the different parts are, despite some of most of the show just looking kind of jank.
Yeah, and you read some of the interviews and stuff from them, and basically it's like, yeah, this was basically like a Hail Mary. Like, we basically just we tried to get all the connections we could. We used up all of the used up all of the goodwill we had saved up so that we could put together this thing. And I think it really shows, because like, they have like 5 teams all working on different sorts of shorts for this show, and all of them have such a distinct feel to all of them, where like Akbu really goes off of sort of like the surrealism of Pop Team Epic, and there are others that like try to tell bigger stories. And there's the one where like the like studio that's doing the 3D, they have one guy there who speaks only French and English. And basically he's asked to look at a Pop Team Epic strip in its Japanese and guess what it's about, and then make his own short based on what he thinks it's about. So like, there's so much weird craft and charm put into it that is like, it seems like it's a miracle that it happens. And then also like at the very end where they have real live actors join them, like green screen themselves onto the show to become part of the story. Like, it is such a mess, but like that, again, that captures Pop Team Epic so well in a way that's like, oh yes, of course. If they were going to do it, like, this feels like the only way they could do it, because there's no way to just like adapt the comic.
Yeah.
They adapt jokes, but they don't adapt the comic.
Yeah, and then I think my other favorite little factoid about it is that they don't know what the Akbu parts are going to be until they air it.
Yeah, right, where it's like, we specifically decided with Akbu, who do these like horrifying, grotesque things, we're not going to watch them, there's no second take, we just get it in the mail one day with no message and we put it on the TV.
Pop Team Epic is such a beautiful mess that, it's great.
Yeah, no, it's very good.
Yeah. And then next up is, Revue Starlight, which has a lot of effort put into it in a different manner in its music, because this is a show about musical theater, and almost every episode they have a new song, and that relates to basically the moral struggle between the two people that are fighting that day. And it's all sung by the VAs themselves, because they all got, like, I think actual theater actresses to play the characters. You won't really recognize any of the VAs that did Revue Starlight, and
that's cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. And the fact that they managed to have so many different songs and have them all thematically connect, and managed to do so many different takes of the ED and have that all connect, that there's just a lot of love that went into the whole show, not to mention like all the imagery that's used for the stage battles. It's all just really stylish and well done, and I just like that a lot.
Yeah, it seems like it really doubles down on, like, the stylistic themes of, like, Utena, which does a very similar thing where all the fights are set to songs that are literally about the character conflicts. But, again, it's just, like, by it being about musicals, by being about stage performance, it really doubles down on the aesthetics of that.
Yeah.
And also, there's a very large giraffe man that announces all of it.
Yes, there is a magical talking giraffe that observes all of it, and he is a great character. Because he's voiced by Seto Kaiba.
Hell yeah!
And then my last pick is Lupin Part 5, which is just every single Lupin anime since Fujiko Mine has looked really, really good, and Part 5 is no exception. It still feels like it has its own unique style compared to other modern animes of today, and I really like that they just keep sticking with that style, and I also appreciate that they made it look like a more Western cartoon for the OP because it takes place in Italy. And Lupin just does everything with such style and such flair that it just really looks really good.
Yeah, it expands on the Part 4 art style in a way that I think is really good, but also, like, one really nice touch as far as the production goes is, like, in between all of the stories that make up the like proper plot of Lupin Part 5, we have these throwback episodes to old parts of Lupin where, like, his character's a little different and everyone's character's a little different, the dynamic's a little different, and they also, like, write and in some ways, like, draw in the style of older Lupin to sort of, like, recapture that feel as this kind of, like, big celebratory sort of thing.
Yeah, I almost forgot about the interlude episodes. Yeah, those are all really fantastic throwbacks to past Lupin series. I really enjoyed that too. But yeah, that's mine.
All right, and then Jordan, tell me about your picks.
All right, so for me, there's not a lot of crossover with the rest of you. Actually, I guess there's a little. First of all, this one's unique to me. It's Devilman Crybaby. This is a show, had a lot of excitement behind it, largely because of the director, and I guess also some, like, holdover excitement based on what series it is. And I didn't end up liking it all that much. It was fine, but based on just the general sentiment on it, I was expecting something a little more revelatory, which it wasn't as far as story is concerned, but visually it certainly was. This was just an absolute treat for the eyes. Like, all the animation was so loose and it all flowed so well. It was just like really lovely to look at the way things moved. It reminded me a little bit of the Tatami Galaxy, except just on a much higher budget, or just they had more time to do it. It just looks like a more complete version of that show.
I mean, it makes a lot of sense given that it comes from the same team and style, like,
right.
And also the fact that Devilman Crybaby was not like a TV anime, right? It just all dropped at once.
Yeah, they did have that Netflix money behind it, presumably, and that paid off. I've never seen an anime move in the way this show does, and for it to be like that and also do that well on top of that, that's a big achievement. Then next up, this one we've already talked about a little bit. It's Violet Evergarden. The complete polar opposite of Devilman Crybaby. It's super traditional in its style. It's just the best at that. It reminded me, or I saw a lot of people sort of compare it to Makoto Shinkai movies in the way that there's just a lot of room given to the movement of very tiny things and details. And it's all just so amazing. Like, all the characters move so beautifully, and the corners aren't cut on anything. It's like the frame rate's always, or like the rate at which it is animated is always really nice, and everything always has the proper level of detail to it, and it's just amazing. As we already hinted at earlier, especially like the metal hands of the protagonist, there are like GIFs out there of what it looks like before the lines are finished and before the colors are added, and just seeing how many different like cells the hands consist at, and just how much that shifts in between frames. It's just amazing seeing how much work went into this show. And it's like, KyoAni, man, with that Netflix money, they really went out and did it all, and it's amazing.
Yeah, regardless of the quality of the show's stories or how people feel about them, it is undeniable that KyoAni releases some of the best looking and like best animated stuff in the business.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because they're like, they've basically escaped the hell of TV anime production.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Then next on the list is Hanebado. Maybe the, like, least impressive stylistically of all these shows. Before just a regular TV anime, just an incredibly consistent production. Much like with the intro, like, the movement's always smooth, characters always look on model, and they really managed to make badminton look super exciting. And I just like stuff they do with characters that you don't see in anime a lot. Like, I like the way, even though I think the way they portray the PTSD as basically like a robot shutting down is not very good, the way they handled it, that visually being what it is, was very nice. And I also like that, I forget her name, but like the character with like the short spiky hair, the girl with the short spiky hair.
Mm-hmm.
I liked the way they animated her differently from all the other characters. Like, there was way more power behind her moves than of her opponents. There was a lot of that just all around the show.
And so much attention to the tiny movements, like how,
Yes.
you know, she has kind of like a busted ass knee. And that plays so much into the way that she moves in comparison to other characters.
Yeah.
And like just all the like little tiny stuff that you wouldn't normally notice, but is like very sports, you know?
Yeah. I did think it was kind of funny that they visualize her powering up in the same way that they visualize her like messing up her knee, because they always show like a muscle flexing whenever like in the lower part of her leg whenever something goes wrong. But that's also what they do when she like is about to shoot the real shot.
Mm-hmm.
But always look dope, and that's what matters for this category. So there you go.
Hell yeah.
And then my final entry, this is the cool, this is the scrappy one. It's Mekao Day, the Kickstarter anime OVA. Like, the original trailer for this may look like it was going to be super cool, like a lot of just like very loose line art, which allowed for like a lot of free animation, and it is like it delivered on that in spades. And what I thought was especially impressive about it, especially considering that it is such a ragtag production, is how well the 3D is integrated into this show. Like, it might be some of the best I've ever seen, and that's ridiculous for such a like amateur, and I mean that in like a beginner sense, not in a like unprofessional sense. Like, for what was mostly made by people doing like really early work in their career, this show is amazing.
And all of the animation stuff is like one person. Like,
Yes.
3D might be another person, but there's like maybe two people working on the visuals for this thing. And it really does, like, I think the not messy, but the very like utilitarian sort of like cell shading that it uses, really makes it so that the mech stuff like blends in way better.
Yeah. And it's interesting because it looks both like there and present, but also alien in a way. I think that was mostly thanks to the color work, because the characters are all like softer, earthy tones, and then the mech arms and limbs are all like harsh grays and bright colors. That was a really good decision, I think.
Yeah, I think that like Mekao Day is definitely like one of like our indie pick, you know, because it's like, I don't think they've released it for like general consumption. I assume someone has, but like the people who made it is for like the Kickstarter backers. But like, Mekao Day is such an incredible like proof of concept for like, not necessarily like you don't need a huge staff to make anime, because this still took like several years to put out.
Right.
But like the ingenuity of like modern animators and stuff, like how One Punch Man used a lot of like digital artists and like up and coming sort of people to like show just how much they can do, you know, on their own. Like, this does that, a similar sort of thing. And again, the fact that it's like one person animating, one person doing the music, like the small sort of studio and what it comes out with, even though it's not the most like impressive looking thing, like what they're able to accomplish is so incredible.
Totally. Absolutely blown away.
Yeah. All right, and then mine, so we've already gone over Pop Team Epic, we've already gone over Violet Evergarden, we've already gone over Megalobox, we've already gone over through Mekao Day. So the last one I have to say for this one is Iraduku, The World in Colors. This was this year's like big PA Works animation. This was like an original story that I think they captured. When I talked about this before, like the visual metaphor of sort of the main character's depression being that she literally doesn't see the world in colors, and only when she finds something that truly like can make her excited or happy she sees in colors is not like unique, and it's very like in your face. But I think that along with PA Works sort of like not exactly KyoAni, but a very similar sort of like artistic style to how they do like backgrounds and like visual flair and stuff really makes this a standout look from like, you know, a lot of other PA Works stuff. Like it feels like it has just an extra layer of polish to it in using like visual metaphor for this sort of stuff, in being about art, in being about sort of like the way these people connect over like photography and other sort of like artistic pursuits in the pursuit of sort of like self-actualization and happiness. I think Iraduku just does an incredible job with what it has in order to tell a very, very compelling story about learning to love oneself.
Hell yeah. I haven't finished this show yet, but one thing that I do agree with, which was one of the first things you said, is that this series has very strong, purposeful use of colors. Mm-hmm. And that was what really impressed me most about this show, because I think as far as production goes, it's not, you know, it's good, but it's not like super impressive. But that really like caught my eye, and that was cool.
Yeah, and especially as like you get further in and like they start like using like magic to be able to like enter into one of the characters' like drawings, you can see how much the style changes into sort of like it's lined differently, and there's so much different like vibrant sort of like watercolory sort of like effects over everything in a way that like again just like pushes forward like visual metaphor and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds cool.
Yeah. And so, Zane, what was the best production for you?
For me, it was absolutely Pop Team Epic for just such a well-executed, wonderful mishmash of styles that you just wouldn't think to see in anything ever.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like, again, Pop Team Epic feels like something that shouldn't have happened the way it did, but it did, and for that, I think it is 100% commendable.
Yeah.
Jordan?
So for me, this one's difficult because I feel like I have a lot of, I guess, alternative series on my list, and I always like to be very progressive with what I give kudos to. So I like to give kudos to things that are like interesting and push at the boundaries of what a medium can be. That said, Violet Evergarden is just so unbelievably beautiful that I feel like I have to give it to this show. You know, I often say, dang, they don't make them like that anymore. When I look at, you know, 80s anime that like really had a certain flair to them that I really dig, and that just animated really superfluous elements really well. But in this case, it's more like, dang, they've never made an anime like this yet. And it's one of a kind, and it's astounding in how just consistent and pretty it is.
And I think for me, like, what wowed me the most production-wise was Megalobox. Like, I think about all of the, like, work on the, like, the mechanical stuff, you know, their gauntlets and stuff, and, like, the way it changes from character to character, and, like, how much that plays into the narrative as well as, like, such a cool piece of storytelling, and just, like, the way that they just, you know, I think when I talked about this originally when we were, like, reviewing it, sometimes there's something really charming about a show where, like, big beefy dudes get emotional by just beating the absolute shit out of each other. And I think that Megalobox so well captures buff dudes just beating the absolute shit out of each other in order to, like, understand each other. And I think that that's, like, captured in so many ways, from, like, the way that they have these... Especially, like, Joe has so many, like, lingering injuries throughout the series. They're sustained throughout so much, and you just see how much he's, like, getting beat to shit from fight to fight, like, as he's literally forced to push himself. And I just think, like, so much of that, like, goes into the storytelling, and I think that, yeah, Megalobox just, like, does what it sets out to do so well, and, like, trying to feel old school, and, like, trying to capture this other time in anime to like feel little more like its source, you know? And I really love that. And again, we have to fall down a little bit as we talk about the worst animes we watched this season. So I would like to note, I only watched 3 bad anime this year. And it looks like Zane only watched 1 truly bad anime this year. So Jordan's going to do the heavy lifting. But in that case, we'll start from the least amount of bad shows to the most bad shows.
So the worst show I watched this year was Darling in the Franxx for... It is the reason why I said it was disappointing earlier, where it had all of these nice themes going for it, where these teens raised in this really weird, sterile environment trying to work out their emotions between each other. And it felt like it was going to go say something about, like, how children were only being viewed as adults by potential workers to them, and then it just decided to be Gurren Lagann for no reason and smash all of its themes and ambitions to pieces, and it's just... It's such a terrible move to do that sort of thing, just to try and recapture, like, past glories of, oh, hey, people liked Gurren Lagann, why don't we just do that again? And disregard everything we've built up before. And just... It just was as much of a stupid, idiotic spectacle as it was to see crash itself into the ground, maybe even to the core of the planet. I hate that it did that. I got really frustrated. Well, I was half frustrated with it and half incredibly amused by what this train wreck was turning into, but, yeah, for running over all of its own themes, I'd say for me the worst show I watched last year was Darling in the Franxx.
Dang.
I also have Darling in the Franxx here. Again, did not make it very far, but just again, it's just like, was 0% feeling it, and like, everything I heard about was like, really glad I dropped that. So, Darling in the Franxx takes up this list. Also on this list, I have Chio's School Road, which was a comedy series that I was going into because I got a lot of recommendations. Maybe the manga's better. Again, like, comedy pacing is so different between manga and anime, and I think maybe the anime just didn't capture that well. But it was, like, consistently unfunny. It looked really bad, and I feel like just, even when it was, like, being intentionally ugly, it was, like, way uglier than it should have ever been. So I was just, like, just from the start, just nothing about it, like, appealed to me. And even though it, like, occasionally had a good joke, for all of those, it had a bunch of really bad ones, too, that just, like, could not hit a landing even a little bit. And that was a real disappointment. And then the last one is Banana Fish, which, like, is disappointing, and also, like, I put it on here because, like, maybe it isn't, like, the worst show of the year, but, like, it really feels like it, like, neuters itself for the way that it was put together, and I feel like that's just, like, a damn shame, because maybe there's something good in it, but I just, like, I could not stand to recommend this anime to anyone, not only just because of, like, the content within it, but just, like, the way it's put together and all of that. Just, there was... It just felt like every time it's just like, oh, this is just, like, not being done well at all.
Dang.
Yeah. Like, I mean, again, props to everyone who likes that. Like, I assume that, like, again, the manga handles this much better. It's just, like, I feel like this anime adaptation had so many things going wrong for it that just, it couldn't pull itself out of.
All right. So, I want to say, before I start, that I only went to seek out one of these as being a bad anime. So I just, like, I had a stroke of bad luck this year when it comes to what I ended up watching. And I guess we'll start off with that one, because why not? That was Killing Bites. Killing Bites hit the ground running this year as being the first anime that got really controversial for just how unbelievably just bad and grotesque it was. And that made me a little curious I don't remember why. But something did eventually drive me to watch Killing Bites. And it was as bad as people said. It occasionally looked decent. And it had a couple of fights that were, like, well animated. And that's the best I can say about it. It is, like, bizarrely sexual at all times, which makes it very weird. So, like, even the fights are made it's very sexual violence, and, you know, I don't like that very much. But it's just, like, it's unbelievably horny. And while that's okay sometimes, it is so overbearing in this show that you can't help but, like, stare through the looking glass and try to see what the writers were up to while they were working on this show. And then, just, like, the plot isn't very engaging, and the stakes are always pretty low, and all the characters are just, like, insufferable, but also one-dimensional, so you can't even be interested in, like, why they get up to the bad stuff they do. And then it's just also, like, really gross in a lot of ways. A lot of rape happens in this show.
Ugh.
That's unfortunate. So it's just, like, you know, at best, this could have been, like, a cool knockoff Bloody Roar anime. Instead, we got, like, just a knockoff Bloody Roar anime. That's a shame. Next on the list, I have Devil's Line. This is just one I randomly picked up because I thought, like, I'm always into sort of urban fantasy. Like, that's just inherently appealing to me. And it's always a throw of the dice. Like, it could be good, could be bad. I did not expect the show to be as bad as it was. Like, it was just unbelievably ugly, for one. Like, it's one of the most poorly animated shows I've ever seen. Characters will be talking to each other and their eye lines will just miss. Characters will stand in the background in really awkward poses and then do a transitionary animation before they talk and then start talking in, like, a weird different pose. And just, like, the whole plot is really unengaging because sort of the mystery surrounding, like, the secret vampire society of this show is, like, really misty, and you don't get enough of a look into it for it to sort of grab you and make you interested. So it just kind of goes along with this, like, weird, crummy, like, I don't know, like, Twilight through the eyeglass of Gantz storyline. And it's all just, oh man. Yeah, it's oof, alright. Like, I do not recommend watching this show, and I tried to finish it for some reason. I just felt like that was right, and I couldn't do it. Because it was just so unappealing in every way. Then the next three are ones I'm actually, like, passionate about for good or for ill. The first is Ulysses, Jeanne d'Arc, and the Alchemist Knight. So this one's just, like, crappy. It's a horrible production for one, and that alone is enough to put it on the list. But it's also just, like, as a narrative, it is unbelievable that someone thought this was a good idea. So the protagonist is Montmorency, who gets into, like, this relationship with, like, a sexual relationship, or at least, like, romantic relationship with a lot of the characters. In reality, like, Montmorency was, like, an infamous, like, rapist and pedophile. Like, it's unbelievable that they cast this character as a sympathetic protagonist in the show. And that is what makes this, like, besides it just being a bad anime, that's what really tipped this one over the line for me.
Right, like, even, so I didn't know that, but, like, even just looking at it, it feels like it's basically this big wizard dude basically collects, like, famous women warriors at, like, very young ages and trains them. That's already kind of weird.
That is, yeah, like, in and of itself, it's already very uncomfortable. So maybe they knew and they just loved him for it.
Oh,
whatever monster was responsible for this. Alright, next up we have, here it is again, Junji Ito collection. So, right out the gate, I'll say I'm not a fan of Junji Ito, like, at all. I actually strongly dislike most of his stuff. I think he is, like, over-regarded, because as far as I'm concerned, he's basically a gross-out artist. Like, people love him for, like, his weird, creepy panels, but his narratives most of the time are, like, pretty bad. There are exceptions. I think he has a couple of really strong storylines. But, like, yeah, it should be said that this was already not going to be a series for me going in. But, like, even as someone who just looks at him as someone who makes, like, creepy art, and there's still value in that, don't get me wrong. I just think people give him credit in areas where he doesn't deserve it. But like, even for that, this show is not just like, this is not a good tribute to Junji Ito. It is just like unbelievably ugly. The show is like super poorly animated. And all of like the big money shots that are adapted from the manga just look so much worse. And a lot of the time they just don't work as being disturbing. And another big problem is that because Junji Ito is so well known for like his creepy money shots, the show is constantly like rushing through the storyline to get you to that stuff. And sometimes it even cuts out whole parts of the stories. Like, my favorite Junji Ito story is The Long Dream. That is the one with the picture of like the Eraserhead baby crossed with the alien from American Dad lying on the hospital bed. Probably know that picture.
Uh-huh.
That's like a really interesting story about like a character whose dreams feel super long, like years on end, and then when he wakes up only a day has passed. And like sort of the discordancy between like the relations he has with other people are affected by that in a really interesting way. And they just rush through it to get to the part where he looks like the Eraserhead baby, and then it stops, even though that's only like half of the original story. And then the first episode, they picked a terrible first episode. Like, they picked, or a terrible story for the first episode. They picked one of like Junji Ito's like long-running comedy characters for the first episode. Just like this empty, droning storyline. And then they cover another story in like a minute, and then the episode ends. It's just, the show is so poorly handled. Even looking at it from a perspective of someone who doesn't like Junji Ito that much to begin with. And then my last entry, this one really got my blood boiling this year, it's Goblin Slayer. I won't talk about, like, just the horrific, downright evil political agenda this show has, because that's, like, that alone is enough to make it really bad. But it's also just, like, one of the lamest productions I've ever seen. Like, all the characters are boring, the art never looks good, the protagonist looks like something out of the 2016 Berserk anime a lot of the time. The plot makes no sense. The world building is just like, it's built on like sort of this meta commentary on isekai stories, and it's just dreadful the whole way through. This anime has no redeeming qualities, and I don't understand why this was the most popular anime of 2018.
Anime fans are garbage?
I think it's called controversy.
Maybe so. The jury's out on that one. But like a lot of the time I don't get the popular anime, you know, Sword Art Online, I don't get that kind of things. I won't have it, but sort of, you know, I get that sometimes you just want your anime, and if it's just okay, that's good enough. This show is like utter putrid garbage in every possible respect. And I don't know how people even watch this all the way through for enjoyment, let alone loving it. It was just a waste of 2 hours of my life, 4 hours of my life. And I'm mad about it.
Uh-huh. And
that's it.
Damn. Well, Zane, from your one show, which was the worst anime of the year.
It's once again Darling in the Franxx for just destroying its own potential. Good job.
Not to follow along again. One that I still watched all of Banana Fish. So like, even though I feel like it did not live up to anything, like I still watched it because there was something to be gained from it, I thought. So ultimately, the worst one was Chio School Road, because it's just a really bad comedy, and like, I don't know, it was actively visually repulsing. And Jordan, which one's your least favorite?
So this one might actually surprise you a little bit, because it's not Goblin Slayer.
Wow, okay.
I think I dislike Goblin Slayer more than my actual pick. Like, I have just, like, I find the fact that it exists genuinely upsetting. But the thing is, and this is a philosophical question that sort of draws me to this winner, does the Junji Ito collection even count as anime? Because it is so often just barely animated. Like, the amount of, like, the minimal amount of work that goes into some of these episodes is unbelievable. And it's a shame because sometimes the style of it is quite nice. Like, there's this really lovely sort of inked outlining style to everything. But, like, so little actual movement goes into this show Like, I'm pretty sure the story I mentioned earlier that only takes about 1 minute doesn't actually have any moving characters in it. It's just still frame after still frame with maybe like a fireplace crackling in the background, and that's it. And it's just, man, that's not right.
So you're really going for worst anime. Like, this is an objectively bad anime in comparison to Goblin Slayer, which is an objectively bad thing that exists.
Yeah, I mean, you know, if this was just like bad art, because I remember a few years ago we had like anime that we most wish didn't happen.
Yes.
And Goblin Slayer would have been that 100%. Like, it's the worst. Like, goddamn, this Goblin Slayer is just horrific. But Junji Ito Collection, like, barely exists, and it probably shouldn't have even made it to air with the way it looks. So, there you go.
Fufa. Alright, but we come up. We have just the two shining beacons of the Coco Disaster Anime of the Year podcast. We have our best prestige anime and our best light anime. And we made this specification last year because...
No, the year before that.
Or no, the year before, 2 years ago. You're right. Because we came to the realization that the things that we felt were like very genuinely like emotionally moving tended to find their way on the list, and we still wanted to give proper regards to the things that are just fun to watch. The entertainment versus like sort of the art sort of thing. And so we decided on these names because it's about as best as we could get without feeling condescending one way or the other. So our best prestige anime are the ones that we feel like have like, again, we don't have like a great signifier for this, but like not more artistic merit, but like, you know, a more like
broadly ambitious.
Yeah, more ambitious sort of like artistic thing. It tries for something, whether it be emotional, whether it be artistic, you know, something within the form that makes it feel like it's greater. And so, Jordan, do you want to start us off?
Absolutely. So, first off on my list, I have Hanebado making its hot return. I feel like I've already like talked enough about this for the most part. I just want to say that, again, character work in the show was just like really good, and there was no aspect in which it faltered. It was just like super high quality all the way through. And in a way that we didn't expect, because we thought it was maybe at best going to end up in the best light anime category, but here it is.
And I think one thing to say, too, is, like, the anime adaptation has been sold as, like, a better adaptation than, like, the manga, where the manga spends a lot of time kind of towing that line between, like, kind of goofy comedy and serious character drama that I think a lot of series do while they're still trying to kind of, like, find their footing, or maybe the author's trying to find their footing. So it transitions better because it still has some kind of like goofy comedy moments, but the focus is still on the dramatic, which is where the story goes anyways.
Yeah.
Which I think helps push the story forward.
Then my next entry is Megalobox, which I see both of you have on there as well. This was just like a really fantastic underdog character piece with a lot of great action, a lot of like really, really thoughtful, like more low energy moments. And I was thinking maybe it was just going to be like a cool action series, but it ended up being that and also a lot more than that. And that's really cool.
And one thing we didn't discuss a little bit, again, it's supposed to be sort of an update maybe to Ashita no Joe, which very popular boxing series. And it sort of twists what is the like arc of Ashita no Joe, where Joe is like much more of a tragic character, kind of like a darker story. Megalobox kind of reinterprets that as an underdog story in a way that I think probably speaks more to our generation, to upcoming generations, than something like Ashita no Joe does.
Yeah, I think so.
Like something that is more inspiring and hopeful, you know, coming from pretty bad circumstances. I mean, they live in kind of like a desolate nightmare world caused by capitalism, so again, very, very relatable.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think Megalobox does a good job of like recontextualizing the story and like making twists on it because of that to tell something different than, again, more hopeful.
Yeah, Megalobox was just a series I enjoyed a lot. It had a lot of style. It managed to have a good cast of characters on its way through it. Heck, it managed to make the token child character not super annoying.
Yeah, and pretty good at rapping.
Jury's out on that one. But he was lovable, so it's okay.
Yeah.
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 The next up on the list, I have Rascal Does Not Dream of Bunny Girl Senpai, but I think I've already said everything about that needs to be said. Just a much stronger character piece and much more thematically resonant than I was originally expecting it to be. And even though not a lot happens in it, like realistically speaking, I feel like the ways in which the characters evolve really manages to carry the series through its 13 episodes and make it worthwhile all the way through.
Cool.
Then I have Makau Day. This one's probably the one that I think is hardest to justify, but it was just the show, it was one episode, but it was the anime that I got exactly out of what I wanted. And I was really unsure about it, because with this kind of thing, like with Kickstarter, it's really common for the project to falter partway through, or for the result to be really disappointing.
Like we had the case a couple years back with Under the Dog, which...
Yes, that was a real bummer.
It was a real bummer because so much happened on the back end that sort of like neutered it.
Mm-hmm. But this is just like, it was, a clean production, and it came out, because I didn't really know exactly what the story was going to be beforehand, I still got to like ride it out and really enjoy it. It was just like a super cool, high quality action series that I hope gets picked up for an extended run or something at some point.
Yeah, they described it as a pilot, and it comes off as very... in the same, like, sort of shonen style as, like, a Zatch Bell.
Yeah.
And I think it's very charming. And yeah, again, we put it prestige, presumably because of the small staff, like, as sort of a proof of concept,
Mm-hmm. And I feel bad about putting action series on the light list, so that's sort of more my idea of things, but that's in the eye of the beholder. And then my last pick, I'm actually going to like change right now last minute, because I noticed that we're allowed to put movies on the list. I didn't know
we're allowed
that.
to put movies. Oh, sorry.
So instead of Irozuku, The World in Colors, I'm going to make my last entry, I Want to Eat Your Pancreas. So this was like a series I already knew a little bit about. I knew about the manga and roughly what it was about. And of course, like everybody knows about it just because of its like comedic title. Mm-hmm. But like what I got out of it is a movie that is really good, despite how unassuming it is, I guess. Like it's a kind of story that I feel like we've all seen enough about before. It's about two characters bonding over the incoming fatality of one of them. And it's nothing about the way it develops narratively is particularly unique, but I like just how well I managed to convey the way that things don't really change when a loved one is going to die, but they also do in another way. Like it's still the same relationship, and you still have fun, and you still like enjoy each other's company in the same way, but something does change, and something does get weird about the way you communicate. And that is something that I don't think I've ever really seen portrayed this well in a piece of media before, and that I really enjoyed that, and that made this a good movie. It was also just like, in general, like a very well done production, and just every part about it was really good, but that's what really made it go above and beyond, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
That's the list.
All right. Zane, you go next.
All right. Well, I'm going to start off with maybe a shocking pick for this, which is Garo Vanishing Line, because I am a sucker for Toku, and this was my first experience with Garo as a series. I know it's got live action stuff, and I know it's got anime, and I just kind of wanted to take a chance with it, and while it doing the standard sort of Toku stuff with its action-y bits, it also managed to be a really surprisingly heartfelt tale with its cast of characters, with Sophie being a pretty solid point of view character for the weird supernatural shit that was going on, and Luke also having a fairly nice character arc, with Gina and Sora just sort of being more complete characters, and the four of them make a nice main cast. It really managed to surprise me with how much they managed to make. For a series that's supposed to be dark and mature, you wouldn't expect something very, I guess, hopeful and more optimistic to come out of it, but it did. Its ending felt fairly optimistic and managed to be a little goofy at the same time, but I enjoyed Garo a lot, and I'm really glad I watched it, even if other parts of Garo the franchise are less good, apparently.
That is definitely my opinion, and I do agree that this series had a very strong cast that I think it rides out on very well, and that's a big improvement over the rest of the Garo franchise that really helps, it makes this show like step it up to the next level.
Yeah. And then after that, I've got Planet With, which was written by Satoshi Mizukami, who I've heard does really good stories in The Lucifer and Biscuit Hammer and Spirit Circle. And this is sort of my first experience with this author, and it turned out really, really well. It managed to make fights not just flashy, but also kind of have a moral conflict to them, that the characters weren't just fighting to fight, but fighting for a real purpose. That it managed to be a really interesting show about the cyclical nature of conflict and overcoming one's personal desire for revenge and the aftermath of achieving one's revenge and just having empathy for other people. It managed to surprise me with just how much it crammed into its 12 episode run. It just felt like a joy to watch every week and just discover new stuff that was happening. And I guess, and since it wasn't brought up earlier, it also has a really unique design for all of its mechs. They aren't really mechanical. I think they were like all designed after like this Japanese style of pottery, and they all do look like that way. It's really, really neat.
And all of them are like vaguely animalistic too, which like helps differentiate them.
Yeah, they all look very unique and definitive, and it's a series that I have a lot of love for. And then Megalobox was already brought up, so then I'm going to go over to SSSS Gridman, which was by Trigger, and honestly just was another good Toku-inspired series that I like, that had a surprising amount of interesting character moments. It teased its mysteries for a little bit too long, but the conclusions to some of those mysteries worked out really well. Not to mention the fact that they actually did a cool thing and left some things up to interpretation. It didn't explain everything. It explained just enough to answer a bunch of lingering questions, and I really like it when shows do that it leaves some things up to the viewer. It managed to have a nice, satisfying character arc, and actually managed with the hero saving the villain from their own emotional turmoil, and I really like it. It has a lot of great animation. It's just a really nice series that I just had a lot of fun watching. It made me glad that Trigger does seem to have some good folks working for them. And then my last pick is Revue Starlight, which I already talked about earlier for Biggest Surprise. It's a very character-driven show. The fights develop the characters. There's a lot of interesting interaction. It took a little bit to get going, but it really managed to shine after it got over its early humps, and it was just a great character study of all of these different personalities just clashing together in this attempt to become the top star. And I talked about it more for our season review then, but I really enjoyed this show. It had a lot of love and heart put into it, and I'm glad I watched it on a whim.
Mm-hmm. And then for me, we talked about Megalobox. We talked about Hanebado. So the other ones I have Iraduku, The World in Colors, which, again, like I said before, I think that's going to be the same with another pick on my list. I really appreciate that there are a lot more narratives coming out these days that focus on the sort of disenfranchised and, like, the people who feel really bad about the world, and sort of how that becomes sort of like inner regrets and like kind of inner turmoil, and the way that these narratives go to explain that everyone sort of feels this way, you know? You are not the only person to feel this way, and so you shouldn't feel like you can't talk about your problems, that you can't talk about the things that you're going through, because it's such a universal thing to feel downtrodden, to feel depressed, to feel like there's no hope. And so, like, March Comes In Like a Lion does that really well, and I think Iraduku does that really well, is sort of bringing together a cast of characters that in their own different ways have a lot of, like, self-image issues, and the way that they overcome them and start to understand, you know, the ways that they feel like they don't belong, or they feel like things just aren't going the way that they're supposed to, and the ways that they're able to overcome them through self-care and, you know, finding people that they can talk to and, like, to relate to. And I feel the same way with the one next on the list, which is Ancient Magus Bride, which is about two characters, one who has sort of been stripped of humanity by the systems that they've gone through, and one who is literally inhuman but wants to exist within that world. And both of them sort of, like, helping to fill the holes in each other to understand, like, oh, you know, you need to love yourself. You need to realize that, you know, these things are important to human life. And although Ancient Magus Bride definitely dabbles in some, like, romantic language that I think kind of hampers the message sometimes, both Iraduku and Ancient Magus Bride, I think, both really deal in very human, real ideas of, like, again, like, self-understanding and self-care and self-love that I think are really important in just, like, dramatic narratives.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
And then the last one is Night is Short, Walk On Girl, which we talked about Devilman Crybaby a little bit before. I think Masaki Yuasa, again, just as he's gotten into, like, bigger projects outside of, like, TV production, has really been able to flex his creative muscles within his studio. And so I think Night is Short, Walk On Girl is just, like, a fantastic display of that, especially returning to the world of Tomohiko Morimi, who wrote Tatami Galaxy. Like, it goes right back into that same sort of style that Yuasa used for that series, and expands upon it and builds upon it in this sort of fascinating way, in a story that is tangentially related to that one, but still tells its own story within the same world. And it's just, between that and, like, a lot of the other stuff he's worked on, like Lou Over the Wall, I think he stands as almost an auteur within anime, just to be able to do his own thing. Like, he is in a lot of ways discarded sort of, like, traditional anime, like, concepts, and, like, really built something out that is his own, and he's getting really popular off of it. And I think, just again, Night is Short, Walk On Girl really is, like, a culmination of all those things in a way that's just fascinating. And I absolutely adore the movie and the story it tells of, like, emotional intimacy, and sort of, like, just, even when it's, like, a fun romping sort of, like, bar hop basically through the magical world of Tokyo. I think it's just very fascinating. And again, Masaki Yuasa just has such a way with the visualization of his work.
And what more can you want?
I mean, kinda, yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
So, Jordan, where are you sitting with your number one prestige anime?
All right. So for me, the number one pick is going to have to be Hanebado, which even while I was like setting up this list, I didn't expect, because while I did like it a lot, it just didn't have that big confetti popping moment that made me think, wow, this really is it. When I started thinking about it, it was just a really well-made, really powerful show with just good scenes and a good story and good characters. And no show this year had better scenes and stories and characters than Hanebado did for me. And I guess, you know, if you just look at it metrically, that's what the best anime of the year is. So that's what I'm going to go for. It's a really good one, and I highly recommend anybody watch it, pretty much.
All right. It took a bit of time to actually come to this conclusion for me, because I really liked all 5 of these shows, but I think I have to go with Planet With. Because on reflection, I realized that its main theme of being able to empathize with others and trying to break the cycle of conflict is a message that's really important in this day and age, and the pacing at which this show delivers that message is just fantastic. You said it earlier, but it really feels like a 2-season anime crammed into one, and
but in a good way.
Yeah, in a good way.
Yeah. like, it captures so many facets of that particular argument about empathizing and understanding your enemy, and, like, the way that revenge is kind of unfulfilling when you don't have that sort of, like, emotional understanding of, you know, what's going on.
Yeah, it all just comes together to form a nice, cohesive whole that I really just kind of want to spread the word about it, more so with just not a lot of people knowing that this anime exists.
Yeah, I feel like it really went under the radar despite having an author who's, like, pretty well regarded, just like Lucifer and Biscuit Hammer is not, like, a household name in the same way, and so I think Planet With similarly kind of went under the radar.
Yeah. But yeah, that's probably my anime of the year.
And then my prestige anime, because I'm a sap, is Iraduku. I just really appreciate the narrative, and I think Iraduku does capture it in such a way that captures multiple different perspectives on the idea of feeling completely stuck in your life and sort of hating yourself, and the ways that these characters all are able to push forward thanks to having a support group and people they can talk about these sorts of things. And, like, again, it's not particularly subtle, to the point where in the last episode, sort of the big final emotional catharsis is literally the main character just asking, am I allowed to be happy when, you know, when there's still so much, like, grief in her life? But that still tells such a powerful story about, you know, how it feels, is like, you don't have to wallow in all this grief. Like, it is okay to be happy even though these things have happened. And so I really loved that particular story that it told and the way that it told it.
And you know what? Being subtle is not an inherent virtue. You know, sometimes
right. No, absolutely.
Being out and about is just the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah, I'm not saying that's bad. It's just like, you can look at it and kind of, like, roll your eyes a little bit because it's like, oh, well, of course. But, like, no, it's genuine and straight to the point, and I think that benefits it a lot. Even amongst sort of its flowery language. Yeah.
Sometimes subtext is for cowards.
Exactly!
Absolutely.
And finally, our best light anime. Let's get right into it. And Jordan will start again.
Alright, so it's almost midnight, which means I'm about to turn back into an anime pumpkin. So I have to quickly rush through this so I can get into bed and drink my chocolate milk, which is how I reverse the process. First on the list, Place Further in the Universe. I struggled with whether to put this here in Prestige Anime because it is occasionally about some pretty heavy themes, like depression and not really knowing whether life is worth living, and if, like, putting on a happy facade is the right thing. But all in all, I put it here because at the end of the day, it is still a cute girls doing cute things show. And it's a very, very good one at that. Like, the whole story arc is just super engaging. The character interactions are great. It's a really funny show. I think this was a really good year for comedy anime, and especially when it comes to comedic timing. And this show was one of the best examples of that. So there's that. Then second, like, sort of carrying on from that is Euro Camp. Which was just a great show to sort of, like, sit on the couch and turn into a big molten blob of happiness too. Similar to A Place Further Than the Universe, fantastic comedic timing. Like, I still see the videos of, like, the dog not being able to reach Rin because of the collar and her smiling, and then her getting, like, body checked by the other dog, and it still makes me laugh. Just a super funny and super cute anime. That's really all there is to say about that.
Yeah, Laid Back Camp is such a good, feel-good series. Like,
totally.
Nothing about... There's, like, zero conflict, and honestly, that's fine for what it is. Like...
Definitely. Well, the conflict is whether or not they're going to get Rin to go camping with them.
Right, and they did. It's great. See, everything works out great.
Hell yeah. Then I have Gakuen Babysitters. This one I think is really fun because, like, obviously, babies are cute. Well, sometimes. And what I think they did really well in this show is making the babies, or, well, they're not babies, they're like preschoolers, actually, like, sort of act like real preschoolers. Like, they have strange priorities, and sometimes they react weirdly to certain things. There's one episode that I really liked where one of the preschoolers really hurts one of the other one's feelings, but they refuse to make it better because they just don't want to be wrong, so they double down on it and make it even worse. And that's such a real preschooler thing. And they managed to do all that and still make it into a super fun, cute anime, and that's just fantastic. And then fourth on my list, very different in tone from the rest of these, is Skullface Bookseller Honda-san.
Hell yeah.
A fantastic comedy anime about working in a bookshop in Japan. I love the way this show has like a double layer of reality, because it's based on the characters' like real life, and then things that happened, or it's based on the writer's real life rather, and things that happened in real life because of the manga sort of make a reappearance in the series.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Those are some great jokes.
Absolutely. Like, the whole series is there's just like basically never a dull moment, except for like the first episode, which has like a really weird extended homophobic segment in it. But other than that, it's just like fantastic, super funny the whole way through. They use the limited animation to their benefit, and just like the visual humor of this show is really funny. And then my final entry, which is, I guess, kind of like the just play along entry, because I didn't really have a fifth one. It's Grand Blue, a diving show, which was just like a really cool, fun show about hanging out with your friends and having a fun time in the water.
Ain't nothing better.
Ain't nothing wrong about that. And the winner is Yuru Camp, because it was the cutest and funniest show of the year.
Nice.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us again, Jordan. Didn't expect it to go this long, but happy accidents. Thanks for joining us again. Glad you could be here to talk about this, and we wish you the best of luck as you turn into a pumpkin for another year, and maybe we call on you again.
Well, at least I'll be able to survive until Halloween, hopefully.
Oh,
after that, we'll see what happens.
Right.
Thanks for having me. And
yeah, no problem.
Enjoy the rest of the podcast, everybody.
All right. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
All right. So on my best light anime, we have Lupin the Third Part 5. God, the last two seasons of Lupin have just been so incredible. Just really adored the action, really adored the storytelling, because it really does push Lupin into, I think, a more proper gentleman thief, where he's more of a good guy. Like, they've taken away a lot of the teeth, and like, that's fine, because a lot of the teeth to Lupin was like kind of being a weird sex pervert. So I really appreciate him turning more into basically like James Bond. Like, he really has turned into sort of like a spy who occasionally steals things, and I'm totally cool with that. Like, I think Lupin's it's a really good job. There were great character moments for all of the main cast within this, and just like the new character, like, I really enjoyed Rebecca from Part 4. I think Ami is a much more fully realized character in terms of the relation to Lupin and the storytelling through it, because she ties in so well to the narrative arc. And yeah, Lupin the Third is just like, it was so much fun. And again, with the throwback episodes to like other parts, like just seeing the way that Lupin has evolved and the way the comedy has changed while still maintaining that very like goofy, fun action sort of setup.
Yeah, I put Lupin the Third Part 5 down as well, and I really enjoyed seeing Lupin in a much more modern setting, with just, technology playing an active role in all of Lupin's schemes, and we also got maybe a little peek into Lupin's past with the reveal of old rival, I guess, Alfred, who is himself a very interesting character, and it feels like he's going to be, like, the central villain of a Part 6 or another mini or an OVA if they decide to do that. Lupin is just such a blast to watch, and they managed to just nail everything about it. It's just a fun show.
And some other stuff that, like, we went over in the review thing, but it's been a while. So, like, the callbacks to old movies and stuff, like the fact that they hide out in the castle of Cagliostro.
Yeah.
The end, and, like, just stuff like that. And the fact that, like, at the very end, supposedly, Lupin pulls off his fucking face. Like, his whole face has been a facade, too, as if Lupin the Third, like James Bond, is just a title passed down. And we sort of get that. We get that Lupin is. But it seems like Lupin the Third might also be that, because it's implied that that face is like a facade. So it always knows how to pull back, like, you still don't know everything about Lupin now, do you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Even though they reveal more, is great.
Yeah, that was such a strong conclusion to that little character arc between Lupin and Fujiko.
Yeah, absolutely. I had Laid Back Camp as well. I put Mr. Tonegawa Middle Management Blues on here as a comedy series that I think really hit the balance of, like, kaiji fan service for, like, giving you insight into that world, especially where Tonegawa is, like, a primary player in the story. And also, like, just being, like, a good office comedy. Like, the fact that, like, they pull 100% away from the kaiji storyline to tell a story where, like, Tonegawa and his company are being trolled online. So he has to learn how to fight back by learning how to tweet memes and shit, and, like, learn how to draw anime fan art to, like, draw in fans is just fantastic. Like, stuff like that really, really charms me, and I think it does a good job, again, of, like, building on the kaiji world and, like, pulling some of the teeth out of, like, the menace without completely, like, making it seem like it's just completely goofball and they've ruined the original that it's based off of. Speaking of kaiji, I'm putting Animal World on here. Yes, it is a live-action movie, but it is an adaptation of kaiji, and I think it's really important to talk about this because it's an adaptation of kaiji's first arc where the main guy is still, like, kind of down on his luck, but one, he has a girlfriend, which is very different from kaiji, and two, he's got this reaction to when he's stressed out where, within his mind, he turns into a giant fucking clown and starts, like, fighting other people who he envisions as monsters, like fucking, like, Men in Black aliens.
I'm sorry,
just
what?
Out of nowhere. It has no explanation, really, besides I used to watch this show about a clown who would, like, shoot people, and then this became my alternate persona when I get too stressed out and become super cool. So, like...
Oh, like the Quiet Man!
Exactly! But, like, this is way cooler than the Quiet Man. And it, like, doesn't explain it. It, like, it follows kind of a different arc to tell its own sort of, like, a story within the confines while not changing too many, like, details about the actual kaiji story. And I'm really hoping it gets a sequel just to, like, build on this, because it also has, famed American actor Michael Douglas as, like, the Tonegawa fill-in, which is really good. Like, it's just such a good... Oh, it's such a good movie, and God bless. I love it so much for just being, like, the most extra way you could adapt kaiji while adding the own elements in to, like, differentiate it and make it unique and tell its own story where it's, like, technically its own world. I absolutely adore it. And then the final one is Double Decker, Doug and Kirill. For when we talked about it, it's like it's kind of like Tiger and Bunny. It's very goofy, sort of like buddy cop sort of stuff that kind of gets weirdly serious at the end out of nowhere. But, like, the characters and the interactions they have are just so good and so entertaining. Like, it is so consistently funny in a way that, like, cannot be denied. It's a fantastic show as far as, like, buddy cop stuff. And, like, the narrator is so good in it, just like in, like, Tonegawa. I think this year has been very good for, like, comedy narrators.
Yeah, I put down Double Decker as well for basically the same reasons. It's a very dumb, goofy police procedural that has some very strong characters in it, and basically almost everybody gets an episode, and it's great. And the left field plot twist when it gets serious is also great for a completely different reason.
And also the point where it's like, we did actually set up this plot twist, so, fuck you if you don't like it, basically, is very good.
Yeah, Double Decker is just a lot of fun, and I'm kind of curious to see what the Tiger and Bunny team is gonna do next, because this showed that they have just really strong ability to write comedy, and I'm glad they haven't lost it since Tiger and Bunny.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess I'm jumping into my own stuff. I'll start off with What's Cooking at the Emiyas, which is just what I called it. It has a much sillier title, but it's just a light cooking anime starring the cast of Fate Stay Night, and it's just really nice and pleasant to watch these characters not murdering each other and just see them cook up a nice meal every day, and it's just fantastically animated as well. If you like Fate as a series, then I'd say you really should watch this, because it's really charming and cute, and I had a lot of fun with it. And then I've got Hina Matsuri, which I mentioned before. It's this story of this weird Esper child that meets a Yakuza member and how basically he adopts her. And it's just... It has some very, very strong character-based comedy like Double Decker, but it doesn't have a serious plot thread running through it, but it does have a lot of individual character arcs, and those are surprisingly well done for a more comedy-focused show. I mentioned Anzu earlier, but her arc from essentially living with the homeless to getting adopted by a family to her being the nicest and sweetest person ever is just so heartwarming that it may make you melt. It's amazing how the show manages to deliver a fantastic balance between really well done comedy and really heartwarming moments. I cannot recommend Hinamatsuri enough.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last thing I put down here is Pop Team Epic for just being a fucking mess that more often than not managed to make me laugh at this just dumb, irreverent humor. I don't know if we discussed this that well, but one of the big dumb gimmicks of Pop Team Epic is that they repeat. The episodes are only 12 minutes long, but they repeat the second half with male VAs, and it's different for every episode, and the amount of VAs that they get for this dumb idiot gag is incredible.
And really, like, high-profile people, right? It's not like they're just pulling in, like, side characters. They're pulling in, like, Aoyuki, right?
I don't remember if she was part of it, but I do know that, like, they got M. Bison's VA and Frieza's VA to do stuff, and...
Yeah, and they like, were pretty, like, well picked out where it's like, these are actual duos from some other show, which is really good, too.
Yeah, like, there's so much effort that they put into this dumb, goofy joke anime that it's just impressive to see it all come together, and it's also really funny, too. I will never stop thinking about Hellshake Yano.
It should not have existed, but it did, and God bless.
Yeah.
And so, my best light anime, just like it did several years ago, Lupin III just grabbed my heart and wouldn't let go. Like, I think of all the shows, this was always the one that I was, like, most excited to come to each week. Because, like, the plots were always so, like, incredibly good, where it's like, you don't know where it's going in, like, the best way possible. Like, you know it's gonna build, but you don't know how. Or it's a side story that has, like, a lot of entertainment value. Like, I really like the one where Lupin is, like, called out by an eccentric to play a chess game with him, and all the while, Jigen is having a fucking sniper fight with someone who, like, supposedly, like, worked with him back when they were in the army together. Super good.
Yeah. And then my pick is Hinamatsuri for just being really heartwarming, being really funny, having really good character-based humor, and just being a joy to watch every week. I really love Hinamatsuri. It's so good.
Yeah, I feel like that's the one that, like, very early on was, like, a big pick for Anime of the Year for everyone. Just, you know, for being so funny and also so heartfelt.
Yeah, I'm glad I watched it. It was a real treat.
And so that brings an end to our awards show. Maybe after a bit longer than we expected, but you know, we got there.
Thank you for enduring all of the anime.
Yeah, no, we had a lot to say, and you know what? I think, despite how long it took, I think it was all good. I think we had some good stuff to say, and I think this was a very good year for anime.
Yeah.
Like, there were definitely series that rose to the top a lot more. Like, you see Megalobox a lot more and stuff like that. But, like, it just shows how good those shows are, I think. Like, in a year that has so much, and, like, so much diverse sort of taste to it. Like, I'm gonna go really quickly through some of the AOD stuff from our fans and just kind of talk about the series that match up and, like, don't. So, like, Fractal Sandwich says, Bloom Into You is the anime of the year, which is, like, I guess, like, the new big sort of, like, Yuri romance series that, in a ways like, kind of like Sweet Blue Flowers, deals with relationships in a very mature way that, like, transcends beyond just fluff romance and just, like, kind of wish fulfillment sort of stuff like you see in a lot of the genre, especially, like, earlier on. So I think that's really fantastic that came out. Especially amongst series from this year like Citrus. You know, like, it's really nice to have a good one. Yeah. And then also says, honorable mentions to Revue Starlight and Gun Gale Online and the Princess Principal dub, which I guess we'll count here. That's okay.
I forgot that they were going to dub Princess Principal.
Yeah, it's surprising, but hopefully that means that we're going to get more of it. That's all we can hope.
Yeah.
Then, Fractal Sandwich also says that Release the Spice gets the most deserving of a video game adaptation award, which maybe I could see. It'd be interesting to see. I feel like there are a lot of games and like Blu-rays coming out that have like weird like 8-bit mini games attached to them. Like I know the latest Steins Gate did in Japan. I know Chio's School Road had like a mini game on one of its Blu-rays. So like I wonder if that's eventually just going to turn into getting more weird anime game adaptations.
They are coming back.
Especially with more popping up in the West. Yeah, there seems like there's just a lot more coming out. Then we have Shaded Spriter, who watched exactly 5 anime, and so we have Devilman Crybaby, Gun Gale Online, Zombieland Saga, Magical Girl Sight, and the Neo Yokio Pink Christmas episode. Neo Yokio's back, folks! Waffle Man says in no particular order, we have Pop Team Epic, Golden Wind, which for us, we're still waiting for the end to officially vote on the award, but Golden Wind has had a very strong start. Part 5 is a lot better than I think people give it credit for, and a lot of that I think is probably the original translation.
Yeah, I'm surprised how much I'm loving Part 5 now that, it flows a lot better.
Mm-hmm. I also love that the Italian subs for it absolutely refuse to do the demulto. And, like, actually translate like it should be. Then Double Decker, Megalobox, and Lupin the Third Part 5. Binak just adds that the best boy of the year is definitely Honda-san, which I can agree. Very good skeleton boy.
Extremely good.
Psychobabble says Devilman Crybaby. Love is Hard for an Otaku, which I've heard a lot of really good things as like an adult romance series, and I've really wanted to go back to that at some point. Hinamatsuri, Pop Team Epic, and Lupin the Third Part 5. The Toughest Bean notes that it seemed that the best animes this year were the ones that came from a position of really loving the genre or series they came from, and then, in no particular order, gives us Megalobox, which definitely fits that, Lupin the Third Part 5, Planet With, SSSS Gridman, and Thunderbolt Fantasy, which are all just sort of like, they feel like love letters to a particular genre or craft for sure.
I can definitely agree with that.
And then friend of the show QB has Hugto Precure, Revue Starlight, Pop Team Epic. Number 4 is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which we can allow that. It's animated.
It is extremely animated.
Penny Parker's there. That's anime. And then for an anime part 4, is number 4, it's Agretsuko, and then Hakame and Mikochi, which is like a really like obscure one. It's like, again, we see that there is a breadth of shows that people were really excited about this year. It's just like there are definitely some that bubbled to the top that were more popular and definitely like captured more people. And I think it's cool that we have such a breadth and spread of shows like this. And that will do it for our Anime of the Year podcast for 2018.
Woo!
Close the book. It's done. And because this took so long to take out, the rest of the programming for this season is going to be a little off base. So follow us at Coco Disaster on Twitter to keep an update on when, like, kind of how the schedules are shifting and when the episodes are coming out, and we will figure that out later. So, until then, I hope you've enjoyed our long discussion about the Anime of the Year, and hope you will join us again for whatever the next show comes out. Until then, I've been Chorpsaway.
And I've been Zane Zero.
And Jordan Kai was with us too. And this has been Coco Disaster. Sweet dreams.